And now we're live.
Good evening, all. It is yet again that 6+++ show, the 40k show with the most amount of mathematical symbols, and I'm in my own ear, the most mathematical symbols, here again for yet another breakdown. I am joined by my dear leader, Chris. Chris has never threatened me and my state on the team to say nice things about him. Chris, how are you doing
No.
today?
I am very well, and I'm excited for the Ed show.
Absolutely.
Ed's going to be hosting for the first time, so I'm really excited.
Of course, I didn't introduce myself. I am Tom, lowest of men.
Yeah.
I've had a haircut. I have a sail in the background.
Yeah, and this could be the start of a revolution, really, if this goes well.
I don't want
Think
to
of
call it a
this
coup.
as a job
But...
interview.
Oh, great!
We'll see how
I
it
love
goes.
rolling into job interviews without preparing. That's my comfort stay.
That's what we like. I'm all right. I've had a few days off, and yeah, loving life.
Fantastic. You been up to any 40k over the last few days?
I have not. No, that's a lie. I've painted some shroud runners, so when I tried to get my Yanari ready, I had to rush them, and so I've kind of done that crazy thing that no one ever does and returned to them. And I decided I'm going to paint geometric like diamonds and angles on the jet bike body, and then obviously realised quite quickly it's quite hard to paint full straight lines. So I spent quite a lot of time fixing those lines. And
Mm.
from 2 meters away, they almost look straight.
Which is
So
which is a thing in itself. It's a tabletop army. If you're not putting them in a display case, if it looks good at 2 feet, that's
yeah,
valuable in itself.
I did start taping them up, and
Mm.
then it took me like 3 minutes for one model, and I was like, no,
Mm.
it's not for me. Not
No,
like that
no.
life.
So are we talking sort of Harlequin inspired patterns? Is that what we're going with? I might have to see
No,
some
if,
pictures.
if you look if you just look at the Shroud Runner box art, you'll see they've kind of got like these weird right angle diagonals,
Hmm.
diamond type things, just scattered all around. Um, so yeah, we've gone for that. It's reasonably repetitive across all
Sure.
6 models. So, and I'm not going to have to paint anymore. So I am happy.
Just you wait until 10th edition when they're the best unit in the book.
And I'll be running 18 of the bastards.
Absolutely. And you'll be ruining the day that you went, I'm going to do some geometry.
Yeah, yeah, I don't want to paint anymore. That's definitely true.
Absolutely. Lovely. Well, thank you. Let's go to It's Swizzly. How have you been this week?
Oh, hi. Yeah.
He's having a great
Um,
evening already.
Yeah.
Glad to be here, I see.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I have just signed up to Lewis's event to what would you call it? To get back on the horse after getting my bumhole. Oh no, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. After getting my backside slapped, let's call it that,
Okay.
at the weekend. There you go.
Just the meat, not the whole.
Just
In the words of Bad Boys.
yes, yes. I got my cheeks slapped. I think that's what the kids say, right?
Cheeks
Um,
clapped.
Clapped. There you go. So yeah,
That's
okay.
very different.
I'll translate for our boomer.
Stop.
Thank you. Yeah. God, I'm flushed already. Brilliant. And I'll be telling you all about my experience soon. But no, all good, all good. I'm looking forward to it.
Lovely.
Other than that, though, yeah, very much looking forward to this event in 2 weeks. Now, I am that person who finishes an event, and I've spoken to a few people who, some people finish an event and just like, right, I don't even look at a miniature for a week. Then other people like me or Max, who's my mate, are like, as soon as you finish an event, you're like, anybody else want another game? Got any more of that plastic crack? I need that plastic crack, fam.
Yeah.
Give me a game. And that's what I've been doing.
My first proper event that I went to after getting back in the hobby was the London LGT 2 years ago, and I thought I had a 4-1 in me, and then the last game didn't go as I felt it should, and after 5 minutes of self pity, I was sat on the seats in the stadium just going, well, what if I took this out of my list? What if I put this in? It was so I can absolutely identify with that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but other than that, all good, all good.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I don't think there's anyone else to talk
Oh,
about.
come
No.
on.
All right, how have
We're
you
only just
done?
started.
How are you doing, Lewis?
No, I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well, thank you, Ed. I have
Yeah.
obviously been absent from the podcast for a few weeks because, frankly, I've had better things to do. But
Do
no,
I
it's good
notice
to be back.
a little bit of a tan by any chance?
Oh, not a chance,
No,
mate.
not
I am king of the pasty white boys in that I have to have factor 50 on if I'm out in any direct sunlight for more than 5 minutes. Otherwise, they just go bright red.
And
But
of
I've
which there
successfully
was some
avoided
direct-
going bright red.
Yes, even though there was lots of direct sunlight.
There was lots of direct sunlight in Gibraltar, yes.
Fantastic. Well, I guess we'll talk about that one later on. And for myself, I have been painting Custodes because that is where the die has landed. I'm going to be taking Custodes to the team event in 4 weeks now. So that'll be interesting. I've never played a defender role in a team tournament, so I'm looking forwards to getting Michael cheeks clapped for 5 games in a row. Just going, it's fine, guys. I only lost by a little bit. I've done really well.
Done the
That's
job,
gonna be
boys. Done the job.
yeah. That's going to be a fun experience.
Just
Yeah,
get
you
under
won't
that
find that
bus, Ed. Get under that bus.
Yeah, Ed definitely
Absolutely.
won't find that frustrating. He definitely won't.
No, I will ascend to my place of zen and find comfort in losing 5 games. It's gonna be great. Perfect. Well, I guess as a team we've been to a couple of events. I think. Who would like to start talking about their events first? I
Lewis.
think I know who it is.
Basically, once I start, I'm not going to stop, so everyone just needs to
Let's
settle
come
in
to you.
now.
Let's come to you last then. I think.
No.
No. We'll come to Lewis last. Let's
No,
go.
please do the guy that did really well, and then come to the guy that did crap, please.
Well, we had plenty of people who went to the Peterborough Slam, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, we did.
We don't have to dwell on everyone's individual results for too long, but do you want to take us away with that, given that you were there, Davey?
Yeah, sure. So we had a few people at Peterborough Slam. We had 9 folk. We were, again, as if you recall from last week, we were the second biggest super faction, so which was quite
Was it
fun.
after Chaos that we were?
Yeah. So that was cool. We all kind of were the mid-table terrors. Like we were all very much like playing each other right in the mid tables. Kenneth had a like he burst onto the scene, orc-esque, wiring all the way to the 3rd round when I think he got beat by Jack Tight and then fell down at the end. But I think he
most
still got a
people
3-2. Yeah, absolutely. You know,
He's
yeah,
quite good at the game,
that's the
isn't he?
thing. Apparently he's quite good. Yeah. And I'm trying to think of anyone else. I think a lot of the guys went 3-2, and then a couple of. Say again.
Paul went 4-1 with his.
was
But
say,
Paul
yeah.
doesn't count, man. He's taking Broken Army. So.
Well, he took Dark Angels, but post-nerf Dark Angels, with some fun stuff in the list from memory. I think he was taking some Blade Guard. He had some choices in there that he enjoyed, as opposed to being sort of the super cutthroat ones.
Don't give him that. Ed. Don't give him that. Ed. Don't give him that. We need to play it down. No, but
Yeah.
well done to Paul. Well done to Paul.
Absolutely.
And yeah, pretty good. So overall, really fun. A spoiler alert for the entire weekend. It wasn't the results; it was the friends you made along the way. It was honestly the best thing about this event by a mile was having all of us there. Because if you don't know 6++ guys, well, like kind of geographically split up. There's a lot of the guys who live in Peterborough, Cambridgeshire, and that kind of stuff. They're what you might call east. Then you've got like me, Tom, Aaron, a few of the others, John, Lee, who are all over this side, and then you've got Ed, who millions of miles away. But you know, there's kind of like 2 halves, and Lewis as well, which is actually also miles away. And as a result, sometimes you don't bump into each other as much. So being able to catch up with the Peterborough boys was so much fun. They are horrible to each other in only the best way possible. Horrible to each other, but so funny. I honestly haven't laughed at a 40k event like that in ages. So yeah, it was good. Now onto the games. Big drink time.
You've actually got a beer, you legend.
Oh yeah, well I work for a beer company, don't I? By the way, have you tried an edit? It's wonderful. All right, cool.
What size
Let's
is that
chat-
bottle?
Yeah. That's a normal. No, I'm just really small, Lewis. This is a 330 CL.
Pippin, it comes in pints.
I'm only this big. But no, it's cool. So let's talk about the event. So Peterborough Slam. I'll be quick so that we can hear all about Lewis's winning. No one's to hear about me losing. Right. First of all, great venue. We've been there before. It's you've got everything you want. There's a bar. There's like a barbecue thing inside the bar. It's great. There's loads of food, loads of beer, good loos, nice clean loos. Big fan of that. Massive tables, space that you can put your army out next to your table. Imagine that. It was great. So big fan. And my favourite thing about the setup was that it was only two tables next to each other, and then a space, then another two tables. What does that mean? You can get around the sides. You can actually see from different angles, get around your opponent's side dead easy without having to take a 3-day hike around the end of the table. So really great. Terrain was fine. Right. So a lot of people have complained about it. There was a lot of people chatting at the event saying, "Oh, this terrain, that, and the other." Right. Sure, it was light, but in my humble opinion, I think we're absolutely spoiled for terrain at events, especially in this area. I think the terrain's amazing at the majority. Sure, this was a bit light. Could have been improved, yeah, but was it absolutely playable? Yeah, it was. It's not, I didn't see any tower in the top three. It was, to be fair though, it was Demons who have an invuln. It was Dark Angels, Ravenwing, who I've heard are pretty good at shooting. So the top three was Demons, Demons. Say again?
Votan were in the final against Jack, I think.
They came fifth.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, like shooting was an advantage, but it was absolutely playable in my humble opinion. The hexagon's a bit weird, right? Hexagon's a bit weird, but
I think that's going to come into its own very soon. In a world where in 10th edition the game's going to be less lethal, maybe, perhaps.
Yeah.
Having area terrain standing,
right?
Yeah, might be having some light cover. Maybe that's valuable.
So, and as well, let's contrast the terrain at Peterborough Slam, again, absolutely playable, with Warhammer Fest.
It could have been worse.
What was it? What happened? You are at Warhammer World, right? You sell a terrain set. Stick it on the table, let people play with it and go, wow, this is a great terrain set. I might spend £200 on this. No, honestly, it was almost like you could have put matchstick boxes out and just scattered them on a table. It would have been the same bloody terrain set. So overall, in my humble opinion, it was fine. All right. So let's talk about my games. So I first up played a lovely lad called Aaron with his Custodies on Tide of Conviction. 23.98 in my lowest ever competitive scoring game. It was a shocker. The terrain was set up so that it really rewarded fighting in the center of the board. I don't do that great. I'm not as strong as these Custody guys. Aaron played it super well and essentially tabled me by turn 3. And you know what? This was the big learning from the entire event. To be honest, and this has nothing to do with the outcome, Aaron would have absolutely scored the same amount of points had this not happened, but this was hilarious. I rolled 6 double ones in the first turn. So that was a Warp Ritual, I re-rolled Warp Ritual, a charge, shooting Venom Cannons. Like, it was just so, every time I had the opportunity to roll 2 dice, it was always a double 1. And Aaron was just sat there watching me going, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you punching yourself in the face?
Stop hitting yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I just couldn't get my head around it. But I could have rolled all 6s. I could have taken different secondaries and I would have still lost. And the reason is that I didn't prepare for the matchup enough. I don't play Custodians enough to understand how I win that game. And that, we'll get to it at the end, is one of my key learnings. So Aaron was a great lad. He even bought me a loser's pint afterwards. So, but don't you worry, Aaron. I'll see you again and I'll get you on in 10th edition, all right? All right. But he was a great lad. All right. Now, after that, I went into JP with his Grey Knights on Abandoned Sanctuaries. I won 79-62. JP is a great lad as well, really nice. I've played him in the past and took the win, so I was a little bit worried he would come after me for revenge. I don't like 1-1s, I like 2-0s. That's what I like. I think JP really unfortunately chose the wrong secondaries in this game. He took a chance on me not using the Synaptic Ganglia ability, which allows me to reroll my denies. He took Purifying Ritual and Teleport Assault. Teleport Assault's not a psychic secondary, but it sometimes can rely on it to cast Gate, things like that.
Yeah.
So me being able to reroll my denies was really strong here. I think that kind of, unfortunately, come back to bite him in the butt a little bit. He also took banners, which my fast obsec apparently love. So I was running over the board. It really rewarded me for not only taking down his banners, but also stealing his primary. So unfortunately, I think it was just a bit of work on that. We had to talk about afterwards, and yeah, it was really, really strong, really unlucky picks from him. Absank is tough for me as well, though I don't score very well in it. My secondaries were tough to score. I only scored 20. I scored 28 in that game and in secondaries, but my primary was 41. Again, it really rewarded me for getting across the board, taking those objectives, burning those banners. And then JP actually introduced me to the term "loser's pint," so thank you for that, JP. And he got me. I got him a rum and coke to say thanks for the game. Really nice lad. And hopefully we'll see him at more events. He's talking about playing a little bit more of Star Wars Legion. Bin that off, mate. Stick with 40k. All right, please. No, because we need more of these cool guys in the game. All right, that's in my opinion. So then I got to game 3. So the last game of the day, guys. I'm a bit knackered. I'm Mortal Kombat where you've been hit so many times you're like, ugh. That's where I'm at in my head. I play Luke Townsend. So Luke Townsend is I see him at a lot of local events and national events. And I know that he's at least podiumed local events, won some of them as well. So I was like, oh God. But he has taken Demons, and Demons is actually a favourable matchup for me at the moment with my list. And you might think, why is that? Well, I auto wound on 4s with my Gorgon list. So my Termagants do really good work into, for example, Be'lakor, things like that. So really nice. I took 12 wounds off Be'lakor with Hormigans, which was really, really cool. I would have done better, but I only took squads of 13 rather than my usual 15 because I wanted to give it a go. But hey ho. This game can be boiled down to 3 mistakes that Luke made. 1, he rolled high in the roll-off to go first. That's his first mistake. But then he didn't really have much choice in that one. But the second one was that turn 1, he's going first, and he put something on every single objective in the middle. Obviously trying to, probably screen me out a little bit so that he can bring stuff down and then pressure me. Fortunately, my stuff loves things in the middle of the board because I can not only charge him and kill them, I can then overrun and sit on his objective. So overall, and then I took behind enemy lines, so I was scoring off that as well. So it's like the ideal scenario where you go into the middle, kill a unit, overrun, get behind enemy lines, take the home objective, bang, 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 guns everywhere. So yeah,
Yeehaw!
so he did that. Yeah, so then he did find a gap in my kind of my counter attack. He brought down Be'lakor and all of his goons, but he did it in the top half of the battlefield so that it could really pressure the top objective and conversion. But that left the rest of the board, so I was able to kind of like sweep under that, keep it busy with probably my favourite model of the entire weekend, which was the Tyrannocyte. Just underappreciated. Like, no one bothers with it. And then you move it 8 inches onto someone's objective and you go, that's OBSEC 5, man. And they go, oh, yeah. And, yeah. And it
that
can
drop pod
charge.
just moved.
Yeah. Oh, man, that drop pod. Where's that drop pod going?
It's got legs.
Yeah, it was a pretty tough one. So yeah, I wish I counted how many points it scored me over the weekend. I'll do that next time. So instead of a great man once told me about triangles, and I think that his triangle, he didn't have one, I did, and I think that's what won me the game, in all fairness.
Great. So a really successful day 1. We can probably wrap up there and move on.
Yeah, 2-1. Let's call it an RTT and be done with it, right? Yeah,
That's a really good RTT. Yeah.
So that was the first day. I'm going home. I'm talking to Rob on the drive home. Going, Rob, 2-1. Yes, this is going great. I've been so crap recently. I feel like a 3-2's within my grasp. Rob, what have I got a 4-1? Could you imagine? He couldn't imagine, and neither could I. So day 2, I pull into the wonderful man that is Dave Murdoch, aka the Grey Knight himself, and with his Grey Knights. The score here was 81-91. So a real close game.
Close.
Yeah, it was fairly even all the way through. I think from turn 1 to 3, I was slowly building up a lead. He missed a couple of teleport assaults. It's going to my head a little bit. I'm doing victory dances. It's going great. And you know, I've beaten Grey Knights the day before. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is going well. I'm blowing up Dread Knights with Venom Cannons. This is going great. I got my Hive Tyrant, 3 shots from Shard Gullet, blew up 1 entire Dread Knight in a oneer. Feels great. I took Obsec Monsters here as well because Dave had no Obsec in his army, and I thought, well, he's not taking any Psychic Secondaries. I might as well just double down on it and just take objectives. But I couldn't take that many. My plan was to win on primary, and I did. Do you know how many points I scored on primary? 55. Do you know how many you can score? 45. And that is what really lost me this game, is that I totally forgot. I just didn't catch up with how the tertiary was actually playing out. And I was like, yeah, this is sick. I'm absolutely barring him on primary. And he still scored 42 because he was just like, oh, still on my priority target objective. So that's that. So yeah, he scored 24 points in the last turn. So I was like, oh.
Sounds like
nice.
going second on priority targets.
No, he went first.
He went first. Oh,
yeah.
God.
So he left me
That's
with
harsh.
2 models on the last turn, and I was like, I guess I can only hold 2 objectives. But it wouldn't have mattered, right? It wouldn't have mattered. He'd already just in the last turn just done it in. Dave was my favourite opponent of the weekend. I love Dave to bits. He's so fun. We had a really good time, but also super competitive. So yeah, it was great. All right, and then moving on to the last game, I drew Death Guard, and I was like, I haven't played Death Guard in about a year.
Do they even exist anymore?
Yeah. Oh, well,
Shut up,
they
Iron
do.
Hand.
Let me tell you.
Imperial Fits even.
Yeah.
Couldn't even remember what faction you played. That's how little you see them.
The yellow ones, mate.
The
Come
yellow
on.
ones,
Oh,
back in your box. Sorry, Davey.
No, it's fine. It's fine. This was probably the most sobering game where everything crap from game 1 came back to haunt me. So this was again another army that I've just not got enough reps into. I just didn't know how to win this because I was like, all right, he's going to walk at me slowly, and I'm just going to shoot at him, and then eventually I'll just win the day. No, there was 24 Terminators or 23 Terminators. And I started looking at my secondaries, and I'm like, what am I taking here? I'm not taking Assassinate like a mug. I'm not going to take Cranial Feasting because I'm not going to kill him in combat. I have to take Banners. Oh my god! And it was Sky Salvage. Banners can work. But in reality, the oncoming tide was so strong that I couldn't afford to spend time raising banners and things like that. I was just too busy trying to kill stuff and save some of my army. So Hormigans, and of course he can heroically intervene, so screening him with Hormigans isn't that great. You can still get some good movement off it. So Ray slowly took over the board while I continued to fill warp rituals, take minimal prisoners, and raise too few banners. And overall, the score was 55 to 85, so a bit of a battering again. Overall learnings here. So I did well in the matches that I do well at. Even 81 against Dave, I was really happy with. You know, I scored 81 points as Tyranid. That's pretty cool. So revel in my good matches, but work harder at my hard ones, right? The ones I don't really know. They're the gaps, and I don't know them. They need to be fixed. And I think that's going to be one of my big learning. If you're like me and you don't have the mental capacity to just pull out all this information out of your head, I know Ed's really good at this. Like, he can just like tell you something off the top of his head. I can't. So one of the things that I have done is create a Google Sheet doc, and I've got notes about every faction, and I've had this for a while now, but I just noticed how many factions I don't have any notes on, and I think that's going to be my big focus, is just to kind of build up those notes and try and understand the faction, the matchups a little bit better moving forward, and of course work on my secondary picks a little bit better. Really, I think there was more points to be scored at the weekend. I didn't know. I've realised that it is a bit of a gap of mine since Aaron started asking me like what secondaries I mind taking, and I would reel off like, yeah, this and this. This is what's going to happen, and this is how the game goes. And he looks at me and goes, "What are you even talking about? That's exactly not how this game goes." so Aaron's kind of like my secondary coach at the moment. So I'll be bending his ears. So yeah, overall that's kind of how it went. Big shout out to Kenneth as well because he won Best Sporting. He was a blast all weekend. He was a blast all weekend, and he was great fun to be around. So well done, Kenneth. And that was my and the not obviously the wider team, but that was the overall Peterborough Slam.
That sounds a lot more
Sterling
positive.
effort.
than how you sounded about it initially. I think that's a lot more good in there than maybe initially sounds on the score front.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with 3 games, and then 2 games I'm really not happy with. And I think it's just the learning, right? It's the learning, and it's fine because I'm going to win Saffron Slam. So
Sure.
yeah, of course.
That'd be the ultimate in learning.
Yeah. Also,
It's gonna crush
having
everyone.
reasonable expectations is really important. Everyone. You should definitely do that. Yeah, 3-2 is what I'm aiming at. We'll see. We'll see.
I think the confidence for a 4-1 was great, but I think you've raised a very good point about knowing what the other armies do. I think you're instantly at a disadvantage if you don't necessarily know what your opponent's army can do, what it's capable of, how far it moves, how fast. Your opponent can tell you all the threat ranges and tell you everything that it does, but without you actually going to see it, it's very difficult to picture
this is
and learn.
I knew what they did. I didn't know how to beat it. That's the thing. I think that's the big difference, right? I know that you hear out of war say it all the time. Oh, Death Guard, I'll just stay 16.1 inches away, and then that doesn't work because they come and punch you in the face.
I think it's 17.1 inches.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
That's why you lost.
He did make a 10-inch charge turn 1. He did make a 10-inch charge turn 1. But
That's spicy.
but no, he even laughed about it. So I'm just going to roll this. Smashed it. Nice.
I'm so happy for you.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm over the moon. Well done, great job. But no, every one of my opponents was a blast. So I was overall like a good weekend. So yeah, cool.
Lovely.
Fantastic.
Well, there was one more event that we had on the books. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, just a little one.
Just a little bit.
Little teeny tiny event in a little place called Gibraltar, which you might have heard of. One of the colonies of His Majesty. So this is the Gibraltar Grand Tournament. So it's an event that's run by the team at SN Battle Reports. One of our great competitors here at 6++. Lovely group of guys. It's an event. I've not been to the GT before, but I've been to their No Retreat events a couple of times before, so I kind of know what the standard is over there in Gibraltar, which is incredible. Was fortunate enough this time to take 2 of my closest mates with me, who've never been before. So my mate Chris, and I think I've seen him on the chat, King Julian, has come along as well. It was a 80-person 6-round GT with a couple of army composition differences from a standard 2K event. First being that the armies were 1750 points instead of 2000. Which for me was an absolute lifesaver because I was painting Imperial Fists up until about 9 o'clock the night before, given we were leaving for Heathrow at 3 a.m. So I got literally no sleep before the event because I hadn't even packed. And Julian turned up my front door at 9 o'clock going, "Are you finished?" I was like, "I'm still in the basement painting." And also alongside it only being 1750, you had to choose 5 stratagems as part of your army list. Which looks like is what's effectively going to be happening in 10th edition coming up, and actually for me I think that's a really, really great way of setting up a tournament, because you remove a lot of that kind of gotcha moment stuff that you get from having 45 million stratagems per faction, assuming you can obviously understand what the 5 stratagems your opponent's chosen do, and keep those in your head, which is not too difficult to do. It's only 5. And being 1750 as well, it kind of you fit that into the game time a lot easier, and there's a lot less kind of stress or time pressure. So it all kind of comes together to make a slightly more chilled experience rather than some of the 2K stuff can be. So very good. I think the venue as well for the event was brilliant. It's an old converted chapel in the centre of Gibraltar, so it's got a huge stained glass window at one side, and it's a long kind of obviously with a pitch roof down the middle, loads of space around the board. So like Davey was saying, each board in this event is individual, so you've got full 360 around your board, so none of the boards are pushed together at all, and as is the standard now for SM Battle Reports events, the terrain they put together is incredible. I shared some photos on my Instagram over the weekend and yesterday. Just brilliant. The level of terrain that I would like for my Saffron Slam events, really. So I'm effectively trying to kind of shamelessly copy that when I create mine, in that the majority of the boards are on this really lovely themed terrain. Like there's a big one board with this massive bridge going across the middle of it with buildings sort of overhanging it on all sides, and there's this big tower one that's got these big tower plasma generators and all sorts going on. So really properly like deep into the lore of 40k in terms of the board, which is amazing. And then the top sort of 8-10 boards, we're using the WTC layout, I think it is. So lots of ground floor blocking, line of sight, and that sort of stuff. So those players that after the first couple of games were performing well, got to play on sort of more balanced terrain, and everyone else who's there to have a really good time and make the most of it gets to play on the really themed stuff, which in my opinion is the best way to run an event. I think that gives you the best balance between a competitive experience but also fun. Crucially, the venue also had air conditioning, which in Gibraltar, when it's 28-29 degrees outside, is absolutely important, because I can't imagine what it would be like with 29 degrees and 80 smelly wargamers in a room together. That would be pretty grim, I should imagine. So
every UKTC event you'll be going to over the summer, my friend.
Yes.
I remember last year, it's hot as balls.
Leeds. Was it Leeds? Leeds was the one that I remember where people were like fainting and stuff.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
I think we go to different events. I don't live in an 1800s, romance novel where wargamers are clutching at the pearls and, oh, golly. Maybe I missed it.
But yeah, no, so brilliant venue, lovely team. The SN guys put all the food on for the weekend, which is really nice. So you didn't have to go worry about where you're going to get food from. And those guys at SN Battle Reports is genuinely a really lovely group of guys. I think they genuinely care about the players' experience over the weekend over anything else. And that simple stuff, like one of the team organised a big group meal out one evening, obviously because a lot of us are flown in from other parts of the world, so sort of 20-25 of us went to this big meal, and it kind of shows as well in the format that they approach the weekend as well. So the event, it's 6 rounds, so it's obviously a 6-round 80-person event. That's quite a decent sized event. That would normally be split over 2 days, with some poor sort having to play 4 games on one day, but in this occasion they split it in 2 games a day. So I don't know about anyone else, but after 3 games of 40k, I am dead. I am completely dead to the world. 2 games of 40k, however, I can handle, and then we can go out for dinner, and then we can go for get some drinks, or we can go for have a look around the rock and do all the other stuff. So when you're abroad in all that heat, just be able to play 2 games and relax after that is perfect in my opinion. So yeah, would thoroughly recommend anyone that wants to go to Gibraltar to hit up those guys. So and I would say just as well, from a personal level, the guys at SM Battle Reports have supported me in the Saffron Slam since I got started. They provide our first prize event winners prize, which is the subscription to their paid for service, which they didn't have to do. They didn't have to help. There was no need for them to give me that for free for all of my events, and I'll always be grateful to them for that. But yes, on to the games themselves, which is actually what everyone wants to hear instead of me just whinging on about how great it is. 1750 points of Imperial Fists. Clearly the most overpowered codex in the game at the moment. Just a level above the rest of the competition. So only I could screw that up. But no, my list, 2 units of Intercessors, 2 units of Heavy Intercessors, the most powerful datasheet in the book. Apothecary of all the relics and warlord traits, all the normal selfless healer stuff. Tech Marine, Captain Dravastis Fane, who is the Imperial Fist's 5th Company captain. I was using the Tor Garadon rules for him. 6 Devastator Centurions, all the heavy bolters, and then, most importantly, Matilda, the Battle Maiden, who is a falchion super heavy tank destroyer. I have kept a kill tally for Matilda, which I will reveal at the end, because it's quite impressive and does include some of my own models, which is always great when your own tank kills your own models. Yeah. So always excellent to see. And my 5 strats, for anyone that cares, were Smokescreen, so I could put -1 to hit on her. Although in my head the image of a falchion just suddenly just disappearing in a cloud of smoke, that's a pretty big cloud of smoke. Like, you do well not to shoot in the smoke.
A bright yellow falchion.
So yes, but that definitely works. It has the smokescreen keyword, so I'm using that. That kept her alive definitely at least 2 games. Auspex scan, obviously, to try and deter people from dropping anywhere near me. Tank hunters, which is an Imperial Fist 1 for +1 to wound. Shield unwavering, which is an Imperial Fist 1 for +1 save. And combat revival, so my apothecary could bring the Centurions back from the dead. So my first game, and obviously going into this event, expectations pretty low. I joke about Imperial Fists, but they are pretty bad, and my list is pretty bad. It only moves 5 inches. It has no ability to score any secondaries whatsoever. The shooting output is great from the Centurions, pretty average from the Falchion. So I was not expecting a huge amount.
My favourite thing about them is how all their rules synergize. So they've got exploding 6s on the bolt weapons, which is fantastic, and then you've got that +1 damage against vehicles and buildings on everything that's strength 7 and higher.
Yeah.
Remind me, are there any strength 7 bolt weapons that you could take?
Do you know what, Edward? I don't think there are.
I don't think there are either. I think it might cap out at strength 6 with like a bolt, so some bollocks. But yeah, so that's slightly upsetting. But yeah, how did you get on?
I do get to ignore cover as well, which is actually quite useful.
That is probably the best
out of
part
all
of
of
the
them,
trade.
that's a useful one. So if I wanted to do it properly, I'd probably just take a normal Space Marine list and make it ignore cover for the whole game.
And the Iron Hands book, and then just paint them yellow.
Yeah, it's tricky as well when every terrain set was probably different, right? Because they were all different cool terrain sets.
Yeah.
So some of them will have had loads of like cover, and other ones will have just been like straight edge walls, I imagine.
Exactly, yeah. Some of them give blocking, some of them don't. The first game I played was in like a destroyed spaceship, so it's like a big spaceship that had crashed into the battlefield, so you could go in it. So loads of opportunities for cover in there, but then sort of my second or third game I was playing on one that was all kind of like big rocks and things like that, so unless you're right on the rock you don't really get much chance of cover. You're just relying on blocking line of sight as your means of defence.
I'm sure that really upset you when you went, oh no, my opponent doesn't have any cover, and I have loads of guns. Anyway, my faction trait, oh no, it's useless.
Well, that would be
Let me
great
roll some dice.
if I had more than a 5-inch move, so I could actually get round the pieces of cover to actually see anything. Because they're all dense, all the boards are really dense, so it's not like it's not like open. There might not be cover that you can stand in, but there's enough obscuring that you can't be seen anyway, so you just have to look at it in a slightly different way. But yeah, so my games anyway, see how many I lost. My first game was up against Jose and his 1,000 Sons, Spanish guy, huge amounts of energy, just what I wanted really to get started on the weekend. That's what you want. Your first game, you want someone that's just so excited to be there. It was a total legend, that guy. I really enjoyed that game, and hopefully he enjoyed it as well. He basically had 2 big blocks of Scarab Occult Terminators, loads of characters, loads of units of Spawn, Rubik Marines, and that 1,000 Sons cult that allowed you to teleport all over the place. So it's just going, and I don't know what's going on. So basically, in a lot of these missions, I took banners and then 2 kill ones, because I realised when I started, having not really played many practice games, that my list doesn't score any secondary points really. So I have to take banners and then hope my opponent gives up points. So this one was just a case of holding the line, sitting on 2 objectives, holding banners, and slowly falling backwards as all these Terminators jumped all over the place and tried to kill me. And what I didn't realise as well 1,000 Sons can do, learn something new, is they can snipe characters with their psychic powers.
Yep.
So Apothecary died turn 1 because he was out. He was just behind the Centurions, but I was like, oh, he doesn't need to be in cover, he's fine. And he just teleported next to him and blew him up. So that wasn't great, because the Centurions definitely need the Apothecary to stay alive. But it doesn't matter, because Captain Dravastis Fane, he stepped up. Last turn of the game, punked 4 Terminators to retake my home objective, stop him holding the primary, meaning we finished 63-58 to me. So I got my first win with a very, very lucky combat with Torgaradon punching 4 Terminators to death.
Sounds entirely fair and reasonable.
So yes, skin of my teeth on that first one, but I have now officially won a game with Imperial Fists at a tournament, so I've achieved my aim for the weekend. I can now go home.
Lewis, what's Torgaradon? Is he any good?
So basically, the reason I take him is he is one of the only characters that can buff non-core units. So he can just give any Imperial Fist unit a 2+ ballistic skill. So it works on the Centurions really, really well, but it also works quite nicely on the Falchion. If the Falchion gets really damaged and the Tech Marines +1 to hit can't get him up to a decent ballistic skill, Torgaradon can make him 2+ ballistic skill.
So even on bottom bracket, he's ballistic skill too. That's cheeky. I like that.
So he does keep, and he's got a strength 12 sort of power fist attack. So he's quite, and with 6 attacks, so at damage 4. So he's quite good in combat. Like he will mess up a
Overcompensating.
fool in combat.
Some would say.
Yes, slightly. So yeah, no, he's quite good. I like him. I'm using the Rogel Dawn model from Heresy to represent him. So I've done a half decent job on him, if I do say so myself.
I'm really disappointed that you didn't leave him as a Simpson. The initial pictures you put in the group chat, he had a yellow face as well. And,
you can tell I was speed painting, because I was like, I just need to get yellow on all these models as quickly as possible. And then it was like, he had a yellow face, and I was like, oh no, he just looked like Homer. Don't! So yes, I've officially won a game, so it's all good. It's a great day to be Imperial Fist. Up against Necrons next, game 2, Dale, lovely bloke, brought his family with him as well. And they kept coming up to me for the rest of the weekend asking how I was getting on, which is really, really nice actually. Contributes to the overall kind of wholesomeness of the event in that if people have brought their families and kids and stuff, which is just quite nice actually to have that going on and take some of the intensity out. But he basically had 2 massive big blobs of shooty destroyers, loads of wraiths, loads of scarabs, Nightbringer, and 2 doom scythes, 2 croissants, which you don't see very often.
Love those guys.
Yeah. Peak Necrons right now, and they had the horrible anti-tank guns, which actually are pretty nasty against tanks.
Chris remembers.
Yeah.
Take us back to 8. The good old Doom 6 list.
So yeah, they can make a bit of a mess.
Fuck Imperial Fist. Let's just talk about 8th edition.
I'm sure the majority of people in the chat would rather talk about 8th edition.
I feel like they're both, for most people, probably as relevant. You are the one Imperial Fist player, but you're doing well, so you do need to tell us about it. Sorry.
Yes, so he was using the Obsec Dynasty, as most Necron players do. He got first turn, which I was a bit worried about with all those destroyers, but didn't quite capitalise on his shooting. I think he split his fire a little bit too much. So didn't take the Falchion out, didn't kill the Centurions, left them both kind of still knocking about, and then looking at his destroyers. So there's one thing that this list is good at, and it's good at stuff that's only got 3+ save and doesn't have an invulnerable save, which destroyers do not have. So Falchion with his flat 7 and flat D3+4 damage guns makes a right mess out of destroyers, which meant that my turn 1 was pretty devastating. I picked up 12 destroyers and 6 wraiths basically immediately, which I don't think Dale was expecting. The Centurions put out a horrific amount of firepower. They might be very slow, but they will really mess up your day. But Dale was still kind of in the game. He had his Nightbringer being quite aggressive, but again he made a little bit of a mistake in his second turn where he got the charge sequencing wrong with the Nightbringer, and he charged the Centurion, so they overwatched and gave me another phase of damage basically, which is the one thing you don't want to do if you're running Catan, is if someone that's only got 1 phase army, to give him another phase of shooting. And Centurions overwatching with 108 shots will do at least 3 wounds to a Catan with exploding sixes, obviously.
108 shots.
Each Centurion has 12 Hurricane Bolt shots and 6 Heavy Bolt shots. So yeah, they do make a bit of a mess.
Seems fair and reasonable.
Yes, but it basically meant that as a result of that charge, I then killed him in combat, which meant that the game was basically over by turn 2. Unfortunately for Dale, Necrons do score well, so he was still scoring, but because he'd given up so many no prisoners points and things like that and assassinate points, I did go on to win 88 to 52. I would have won 92 to 52, but I decided in my last turn, it was literally, all he had left was his Overlord, and I thought, right, Overlord is looking at Falchion and all these Centurions, but I'm not going to do the dishonourable thing and kill him with shooting. I am going to leave the shooting and charge Torgaradon in, Dravastis Fane, to go and kill him. He then proceeds to make 4 out of 4 of his 4+ invulnerable saves and kills Dravastis Fane, does 7 wounds back and kills me in return. So yes, that taught me, and that cost me 4 assassinate points. So you can see how seriously I was taking this at this point, but yeah, it was all good. Chris Parker is one of the guys who came with me. He brought his Necrons, and he's just in the chat. He just said he lost because he didn't have a Doomsday Arc. So Chris appears to be the only person. I think he's now 3rd in the world for Necrons, and he runs Doomsday Arcs in his list, which he actually just uses as battering rams because the guns are so bad. Just Obsec battering rams, just charges them in and goes, you can't kill these guys, so here we go. But somehow now 3rd in the world with his Necrons, after a brilliant performance in Gibraltar as well. But yeah, basically means end of day 1, I'm 2-0 with Imperial Fists. Yes.
Top of the world.
Yes. Woo! So everyone in the 6++ WhatsApp group is wondering what the hell is going on, wondering if this tournament even exists, and I'm just making up these results. Had to send some photos to prove that I was actually playing games of 40k and not just sending fake results in.
I was confused how you can afford to hire 79 paid actors. But,
They're cheaper in Gibraltar, Ed. That's why you have to fly them.
international waters and all that jazz.
So actually that means that puts me on the bloody competitive boards now. So I've come all this way to Gibraltar to play on these really lovely boards, and now I'm on the top table. So I'm on table 2 after 2 rounds, playing on the really cool WTC stuff, which is fine, but not what I was interested in. But then, so I played next a gentleman called Richard and his Grey Knights. Nice enough guy to chat to. I think he's quite new to 9th edition and Grey Knights, because I think we had to catch up on a few of the rules of the game and movement of models and some of the Grey Knight rules during the match. But luckily I actually have the Grey Knight Codex on my phone on the Warhammer app, so I was able to have that out and just kind of guide through the different rules and get the full 5 turns played out. He was running the classic 3 Dread Knight list, loads of Interceptors, Paladins. He actually had Drago as well, which I thought was a great choice. I managed to get first turn this time round and took out Dread Knight with the Falchion, and just basically dumped everything into the mid-board. I didn't really know what else to do in this situation, because again, it's another army that just jumps all over the place, so you can never pin it down anywhere. So I just thought I'll sit in the middle. I've got a couple of objectives. He's going to have to come to me, which obviously did have to do. Unfortunately, Dread Knights don't quite have enough shooting to kill a Falchion in 1 turn, which basically means it's left alive. And then what the Falchion can see, it tends to kill. So after that, and obviously because he's I'm Imperial Fist, he can't use Tide of Shadows, so he's dropped a load of resilience on what you'd normally expect a Grey Knight player to have. Normally they expect to be in cover all the time, so they get +1 to their save all the time. But when they don't have that, I think you can make some assumptions about what kills what based on your previous experience, which doesn't really apply when you play Imperial Fists because they're that good. So once I'd parked everything in the middle of the board and he had to come to me to try and win the game, I basically just killed everything that I saw, and like interceptor units and stuff do go down, even to heavy intercessors, because I'm damage 2 at AP3, so like he doesn't get much of a save, and they do bring them down. Although there was a really awesome moment when Drago made his second 10-inch charge of the day, first out of Deep Strike and then into the Falchion, and then rolled 4 out of 4 wound rolls to do exactly 16 damage, which was enough to kill it. It then exploded and killed my Apothecary, which Apothecary I appreciate. So that will come onto my kill tally in a minute, but Falchion, yes, has officially killed one of my own models.
Did it kill Drago?
It didn't kill Drago. It did one mortal wound to Drago, which he passed on his stupid save he gets. So, but it did also kill 3 paladins when it did that. 2 paladins when it did that, sorry, which then lost him control of the objective he was on, meaning I got a 12 on the following first round. So, yeah, it didn't quite go to plan, that charge. But it was funny nonetheless. But all that being said, it was another win for me, which is exciting, 88 to 59. So now, gentlemen, we're halfway through a tournament. I'm 3 games in, and I've won all of them. And we're looking at Imperial Fist on a 100% win rate.
And
I've just seen on Warhammer Community saying that the yellow paints have increased sales 400% in the last half an hour. Oh my god! Someone else has bought a Falchion. Oh my god, that's a 100% increase.
One other person on the planet has bought a Falchion. Oh dear. So yes, but obviously this was all going to come crashing down at some point, clearly. So my next game, I was on table 2 this time, into Blood Angels. Joe Moscardini, who is a gentleman who's come to No Retreat and Gibraltar events before, so I've known him for a while. Lovely bloke. Has an absolutely stunning army, properly, genuinely incredible. I think he's called Nova Sanguine on Instagram, but I would thoroughly recommend anyone who likes amazing paintwork to go and check out his army, because it's just incredible. He's won a lot of awards for it, and I can see why. But it's basically combat. Lots of Death Company, Sanguinary Guard, Blade Guard, all the characters, and then 2 Plasma Redemptors. Now, as I've said before, my army's pretty slow, which means, from my perspective, trying to get the best out of the army, I have to get my deployment right. I need to make sure that all of my models start on the board in exactly the right place, so I don't need to worry about trying to reposition them during the game. They need to start in a place where they can move onto something that gives them line of sight, or be in a position where they can threaten multiple areas of the board, get some firing lanes, whatever it needs to be. Unfortunately, in this game, completely balls that up. Totally screwed it. literally, Centurions are right in the wrong place, stuck around terrain pieces with no windows in them. Wrong intercessors were on the front line, so I had the slow ones in the wrong place. Characters were out of position, so therefore I had to move other units into weird positions to protect the characters from getting shot by the Redemptors in the first turn. And as a result, because everything only has a 5-inch move, can't advance and shoot or do any kind of shenanigans, I couldn't really get myself, even from turn 1, really into a position where I could kind of flip things back into my advantage. Couldn't see enough stuff to stop the impact of his charges, and as a result ended up getting wrapped, getting trapped, and just Joe
Getting slapped.
Yeah, basically. Got my cheeks slapped. Or clapped, as it were.
Nice.
You get a player of, I think Joe went on to come 5th or 6th in the event overall, won 5 out of 6 of his games. He's too good a player that you can make those sort of mistakes against and expect to be able to recover the game. Tried my best, managed to take it all the way to basically we were 35-35 going into turn 4, and then I basically ran out of models, and he scored 40 points in his last 2 turns. So it went from 35-35 to 35-72. So unfortunately, gents, I've now lost a game with Imperial Fists.
And
So I'm 3-1.
the status quo has been restored.
Indeed.
The universe breathes a sigh of relief as
Blood
back to
Angels are
normality.
definitely better. But no, I think I'd really like to. I had a good chat with my friend Chris afterwards about where I could have deployed differently and how I could have done it differently. And I think it is a winnable game, even for the Imperial Fists being completely outmaneuvered, being outsped, outfasted. I think I could have got the win in that game if I'd have changed my deployment round. Should anticipate the fall on Fury a bit better and all that sort of stuff. So options there, I think, in the future that I can come back to, which would be really good if I can get another game in. So game 5, my hopes of winning the event are over. That's it. I'm not going to go away with the trophy, which is devastating, because Imperial
You may
Fists
as well
are
pack up and
overpowered.
go home.
Exactly. Yeah. What's the point? If I can't go to an event and win with Imperial Fist, there's just what is the point in playing 40k? As a result of losing, I got rewarded with a game into Guard, game 5.
Were you still on one of the top tables with cover?
I had dropped onto one of the themed boards, but it was a very, very dense themed board. So
Okay, that's okay. then.
in such a respect that there was a position I could put the falchion where there was only one firing angle onto it across the other side of the board, because it is Titanic, so you can see through obscuring terrain to shoot it, so it can't hide. If there's windows, you can see through them, but the terrain was like these big buildings with all like these ruined bits and like loads of corrugated iron sheeting and stuff on the front of them, so you couldn't really see through the buildings, but it's such a big model, being 12 inches long and 9 inches wide, that it does poke out of most things. It was a pretty standard competitive Guard list as far as I can tell. I haven't played competitive Guard that much, but 3 Lehman Russes, one of them was Tank Commander, 2 Plasma Cutioners, one of them with Gatekeeper, the Super Battle Cannon Relic, a Rogel Dawn with a damage 4 gun, a load of Kassakin, loads of infantry, mortars, the platoon command squads, all the good stuff. Guy's name is Tom. He lives here in Essex, and he comes to Saffron Slam quite a lot. He's coming in 2 weeks' time. He's travelled all the way down to almost Africa, and to play a guy who's like half an hour up the road. But Tom is notorious around here for being a horrible win at all costs player. He wants to end your games with you in tears, begging for mercy. So no, he's not. He's genuinely a lovely bloke. And obviously, tricky matchup for Imperial Fists because they outshoot you. Really, they outshoot you and they outscore you in that A, they can shoot, and B, that they can score, which are 2 things that I don't do that well for a shooty, scorey army. So if my previous game against Blood Angels was an example of how not to deploy, this game is an example of exactly how I should deploy. Tom, with his Guard, got first turn, which obviously big concern, but I'd, in my infinite wisdom, position the falchion, which actually in this matchup, we take the piss out of it. In this matchup, the falchion is absolutely critical because Lehman Russes, other than that tech priest bloke, don't have any vulnerable save. So the falchion will pick up Lehman Russes for free. But basically, when Chris, Julian and I had done the maths the night before, we knew that if we could get the falchion in such a way that only the main guns of the Lehman Russes and not all the sponsons could shoot them, he would not, on average, pick up the falchion. So basically back cornered the falchion in a way that he could only be seen from one location, Tom did try and go for the falchion, which I think was the right decision. I think he could have gone about it a slightly different way, but it was the right decision to try and get the falchion. But he, with my deployment, I'd managed to screen out the Kassakin so they couldn't get within range of their guns of the falchion, so they couldn't do the mortal wound bomb on it, couldn't drop anywhere near it basically, and he could only shoot me with the main guns on the tanks, which basically meant that the falchion was left after turn 1 with about 11 wounds left. So with a cheeky revive, obviously I had this -1 to hit from the smoke screen, so that definitely affects guard. And it meant that the Tech Marine could heal Matilda back up to her top bracket and allow her to return fire. Now she has got 120-inch range on her main guns, so she doesn't mind sitting in the back corner if she can see Lehman Russes that are trying to shoot at her. So it was quite a punishing first turn. Falchion just one-shotted one of the Russes, just gone, get out, and Centurion's got another one. And suddenly Tom was gone from being quite a strong position to looking down the barrel of bolter death.
Of the falchion.
Of the falchion. So he can't move the tanks closer to the falchion because the Centurions are right in front of him now, because it's on that diagonal deployment with a little circle in the middle, so I'm quite close. I just moved them out into the middle, into cover, and just said, Torgaridon's here, he's damage 4, if you come any closer to me I'm charging you, and I will kill Lehman Russes quite happily. So at that point the falchion is sitting there. He's got death from close range, death from long range. He can't quite finish the Centurions, he can't quite finish the falchion, which basically meant by turn 2 I was able to deal with all the tanks. And that really ends any serious threat he has to my army. But what I didn't realise is, whilst all this is going on, he is just scoring millions of points. Guardsmen, all they have to do is exist on the board and they score points. They just have to be on the board and he gets points.
That's difficult for guardsmen, though, to be fair.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, true.
when I have to put heavy bolters into Lehman Russes to try and kill them, guardsmen are laughing. So yeah, he by sort of turn 3, he was sort of 15-20 points ahead, and I'm just like, whoa, this isn't good. I might actually table him and just lose. So I literally just had to go all out. I was like, everything's charging forwards. I need to take these objectives off him as quickly as possible. He hasn't got anything that can really threaten me, so I'm even the melter guns and stuff in the guard squads, so that chance of them hitting, killing, and getting through a Centurion, even with the Apothecary and all that sort of stuff, is quite low. So just use the guardsmen as little speed boosts in combat to kind of try and cover the board and get over my 5-inch movement, which basically meant right in the very last turn I was able to overtake him on the primary and finish the game 78-84. So there we are. Genuinely at this point I'm on cloud 9 because I'm 4-1 with fists at this point at a competitive event. And after he got first turn, I've genuinely thought that game's done. I've lost. He's going to kill the falchion, and I'm not going to be able to hit him back enough, and he's just going to score. So yeah, we've far exceeded all expectations now. So game 6 is a bonus, which is why I didn't feel too bad when I drew Will and his Tau. He's one of the SM Battle Reports team, lovely bloke, top guy, but he actually plays for one of the international WTC teams. So yes, very good player with a slightly scary Tau list, big crisis blob, 2 Riptides, long strike, 2 commanders, all accompanied by 1 million drones. So there's one thing that Tau don't suffer from in the way that Guard do, and that's the manoeuvrability issue. Which basically means that Will can, wherever I put the falchion, he can put everything in range with it turn 1. Everything redeploys right in front of it and just jumps on it. Which is what he did. He got first turn, moved everything into range of the falchion. He literally only needed the crisis suits and long strike. All the Riptide and the commanders and all that just sat there, giving it 2 fingers as it just burned in the corner of my board. And then just jumps away. Just does that and just fucks off. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? But luckily, because he had so many drones, I could see the crisis teams. So Centurions, out of pure revenge at this point, there was no tactical reason to do it, shot and killed all the crisis suits, which was very satisfying. 108 shots, can confirm, even with all the Tau silly strats, does kill a unit of 6 crisis suits with all the drones. So that's a little bit of learning for anyone there who wants to take Devastated Centurions. They will kill crisis teams.
How many points is a Devastated Centurion? Sorry to interrupt, Lewis.
It is, let me just double check so I tell you the right
70
number.
with the heavy bolters, isn't it?
Something like that. It's 420 points for the unit of 6, I think.
70.
Yeah. Yeah, 420 points for unit of 6, so someone else can do the maths on that.
Nice. Cool.
But yeah, so they're similar to crisis teams, basically. They just don't have the ability to
Fly. Fire and fade.
Move 18 inches and still shoot. And
Have
then
drones.
move back. Have drones. So,
Have weapon variety.
yes, you are literally stuck with heavy bolters. You can't
Ignore
get-
hit penalties.
Yeah.
Get full rerolls to
I
wound.
do ignore hit
Core
penalties.
keyword.
Core
I can.
keywords, yeah.
Yeah, core keywords.
How long have we got? Because I can keep
Feel no
going.
pain with the stim injectors.
Yeah. Have a bullshit character with a 2-up, 4-up, and a 4-up feel no pain.
Yeah, all of the above.
Yeah.
So,
Other than that, though, they're very.
other
Yeah,
than that,
yeah,
basically the same. Yeah. It's the 5-inch move. The Centurions are just so slow. You put them in the wrong place once, so they literally can't do anything. You just
How
got
many
500
attacks
points
do
to your arm.
Centurions have? Am I right in thinking it's 4 on the charge? Or is
They
it
have
3 on the
4,
charge?
yeah, 3 normally, 4 on the charge, or if they are charged. But they have no combat weapon.
Yeah, well, neither do Crisis battlesuits, so they're fairly comparable in combat.
Indeed, although Centurions do hit on 3s in combat. And they do have a base ballistic skill of 3+, which goes to the 2+ with Tool Carried on.
Sure, but Crisis suits hit on a 4 anyway, because if you're playing them and you're a sane person, you're playing them with Farsight, who'll give them +1 a hit in melee, which is where they want to be.
I mean, a pillow fight doesn't really matter if who hits the most with the pillow.
Motherfucker, I put bricks in my pillows.
Yeah, it's when one person in the pillow fight has a plasma gun that can fall back and shoot.
Oh yeah.
And when one of
that's-
them
Or just stand there and shoot into
Or stand
combat.
there and
You
shoot.
don't even
Yeah.
need to fall back.
Neither of which I can do with my pillows.
Mm.
So yeah, basically, obviously, game is lost at this point. I mean, the Falchion just dies immediately. I can move out and kill a Crisis team, but then everything else just picks the Centurions up. Tried to keep him off the primary for as long as possible, which was kind of vaguely successful until about turn 4 when I just ran out of units. Lost 37 to 78. One of those games, I could play it 10 times and probably still lose them all. The only thing I'd try next time, I think, is put the Falchion in reserve. Now, the Falchion is more than 6 inches wide, so it can't deploy and then do anything. So it'll have to deploy, and then wait a turn, and then do something.
Am I right in thinking it could deploy on your home line and shoot?
If it can deploy within an inch, which it can't do.
Oh, it has to be the full model within an inch.
If you come on within an inch of your board, you can come
I
into
don't think
engage
it's
with
wholly
range
within,
things,
I think it's just within an inch. Because otherwise 32mm models wouldn't be able to do anything when they came in, which is
Yeah.
most models in the game.
Oh,
So
I
I
think
think-
it's within
yeah.
an inch now.
I mean, this is completely pointless speculating because the rules are going to change in
In a
less
few
than a
weeks.
month, in 2 months. But
There
I
is
think,
there is a specific rule for units that are bigger than 6 inches.
Yeah,
it's
it
a
might-
separate rule. Units that are too big to be deployed within 6
Oh.
inches have to follow this rule. So I don't know whether that's overridden by the deploying your own thing. Someone better
weirdly,
with the rule.
I've never checked when I was at my Falchion.
It's not come up previously.
No, funny that.
So on reflection, if I could have done that, then definitely I would have done that because that's what I do with the Valiants and things. With Knights now, everything's just all shooty. So, but then because I think what that would have done is encouraged him to spread all his stuff out because basically everything was in a big death ball. So if the Centurions could have picked off a unit and then not got shot in return, or at least only got shot by one thing in return, I might have had a chance to pick up a second unit, which means that when the Falchion comes on, it doesn't then get killed immediately, and then it can shoot, and at which point I've potentially killed 3 of the big units, and I'm outscoring him because he has no obsec or any ability to take objectives beyond kill everything. And then I think I might have a chance in that matchup, but we're clutching at straws at that point, I think. But anyway, very good player. He plays for WTC team for a reason. Like there's great players only play for those teams, don't they? So, but yes. So overall, 4-2 Imperial Fists, just shy of a 70% win rate.
John Scrivo still plays for Wales, right?
I'm
I'm just checking. Not related to this conversation. I'm just checking.
As if you've just done him like that.
No,
He is
no,
still
no,
chat.
defend himself.
It
I'm
just
waiting
came into
for the
my head.
chat.
It just came into my head. Totally unrelated.
What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to check if he's still watching.
I
No,
see,
the
I see.
sod.
Get
There'll be
those
something in chat
engagement
instantly.
numbers up.
Also, don't say that it won't matter in 2 months' time, Ed. I'm still holding out that they'll keep 9th going.
Why would you hold out? Your
I like
codex is
9th. 9th's
absolute
great.
dog shit, and it's never going to get better in 9th. Just have a reset. Have a new set of rules. It's
Fair.
the best that can happen for Nids.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, a really successful event there, and
Yes.
it's great to see, especially when you put so much effort and time and travel time to get there. Obviously, it's not exactly just down the road. Obviously, I'm quite well situated here in Nottingham. I can get to most events by train less than 2 or 3 hours. Gibraltar a little bit further. So
Just
I think you wanted to talk about travelling and events. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Well, actually, does anyone want to hear the Falchion kill tally?
Oh,
Yeah,
it'd be rude not
absolutely.
to.
100%.
Okay, right, here we go. Settle in. So obviously
Should
the
we have a guess?
town matchup, we didn't kill anything. I haven't actually pointed it all up, so I can tell you what it killed. Someone else can work out the points. So it killed 6 Scarab Occult Terminators, 5 Rubik Marines, 4 Chaos Spawn, 6 Necron Destroyers, 2 Doom Scythes, 6 Wraiths, 6 Scarabs, 2 Nemesis Dreadknights, 5 Interceptors, 1 Dreadknight Grandmaster, 1 Apothecary, my own, 8 Blade Guard, 9 Sanguinary Guard, 9 Assault Marines, 1 Space Marine Captain, 10 Intercessors, 1 Redemptor Dreadnought, 2 Lehman Russ Executioners, 1 Lehman Russ Tank Commander, 1 Rogue or Dawn Tank, 5 Rough Riders, and 30 Cajun Shock Troops.
Pretty strong.
Couple of bits and pieces.
Not bad for a 600 point
Just
unit.
about earn its points back then.
Probably, yes. think
I love how
town
at the
matchup
end
is
there, the last model was Guard. And we've already talked about it, but it's just funny to hear no town models mentioned.
No town models were slain by the Falchion this day.
No.
No fish people.
Yeah. Should have deployed it on the line in case he got close enough to then die to the explosion.
Could have added a drone in.
Yeah.
one marker drone.
Oh, well, awesome performance, Lewis. Really, really strong,
Super
man.
happy with that. Absolutely over the moon. Brilliant. 18th place as well. That's not even bad.
Didn't you say it was an 18-man tournament?
You
Hang
misheard
on,
me.
you won 4
18.
games and lost
18.
2.
Yeah.
You lost 4 games and you won 4 games, lost 2, and you were 18.
My score was pretty. So I was right at the bottom of the 4 and 2s because my score was pretty poor. I got like.
Because you were
400
playing a faction with no secondary.
I'm literally starting each game going, I guess I could probably get 6 on banners. Oh, I could probably get 5 on Codex Warfare. This will be quite good.
That's the
Kill everything by turn
Tau
3.
experience for the 3rd secondary. But when that secondary 1 through 3...
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was quite fortunate to be paired into Grey Knights and Thousand Suns because they give up War the Witch and no prisoners.
True.
So they do allow me to score points. And Guard obviously gives up Bring It Down and things like that. So a few Guard is quite a favourable matchup if the Falchion stays alive. Because I can actually rack some points up. Because if I'd have got my normal score against Guard, I wouldn't have beaten him even though it went really well for me. So
True.
I am entirely dependent on my opponent being nice and bringing an army that gives up points. But there we are.
Lovely stuff. So, lead us off on travelling for 40k.
Yes. So I thought I'd give you some of my musings on travelling for 40k. So this would be like a little fireside episode where we just muse on the fun things of 40k, travelling outside of your home country. Have any of you gents on this call travelled abroad for 40k?
No, but
No.
I'm taking notes because me and Aaron are going to a GT in Barcelona at the start of July.
Oh, fantastic! Oh, that'd be excellent.
So I am definitely taking notes.
That'll be 10th edition when the Spanish people don't know the rules, and you're going to be having to try and do the rules
God.
in Spanish.
No. You can't do that because the rules change from 9th.
Eh.
That is, funnily enough, that is a point I was going to come onto as part of this.
Yeah.
I think obviously if you are travelling abroad with 40k or any hobby, it does give you a little bit more to think about. It's a little bit more stressful. You can't just kind of rock up and play. You have to think about it a little bit more. This weekend just gone, that was my 4th abroad trip for 40k, so I'm starting to get the hang of it, starting to kind of understand how it works and what you can and can't do. So I thought I'd start on the boring end and then get more exciting. I was going to start with some logistics, so get your notepad ready, Davey, because this is going to be the good stuff. Obviously, everybody's used, when you're going to events in the UK or whatever country you're in, you're used to just chucking everything in the back of the car, rocking up at the venue, and you're there. You just crack on from that. Obviously, when you're going abroad, you're probably getting on an aeroplane, which is a funny thing, Ed. You might not have heard of it, but it has wings, and it tends to go up in the sky and then land somewhere else you weren't expecting. Well, actually, no, you normally expect.
You weren't expecting.
We were worried on the journey home because there was the French air traffic control strikes. So we did.
We
one
were worried on the way home because there was the French.
Because of the French, you never know what they're going to do. But obviously that means you need to pack your army for a long trip as well as all your overnight stuff and all the other bits and bobs. So what I'd say, Davey, right off the bat, even if you think you've got a tough army, do not put your army in the hold of the plane. Take it in your carry-on luggage. Step 1. I don't know if you've ever seen the baggage handlers at Heathrow Airport put bags onto a plane. I say the word put, it's more throw, chuck, drop,
Yeeting.
kick, beat, usually is what happens to the bags. So if your models are in there, I don't care how much bubble wrap you've put around them, they're getting smashed up. A very good example of that is one of the first no retreat events I went to back in Gibraltar. Someone had put their Drukari army in the hold under the plane, and unfortunately it turned up, and I think this might have been the year before I went actually, but it turned up basically in such a state of deconstruction that it effectively was back on the sprue. So it's the poor bloke. Lovely army, because for those of you who don't know, no retreat is a tournament you can only get into if you paint to a certain level, and you have to get selected and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite an intense process to get in. So absolutely devastating for that individual to have his army basically completely destroyed. It wasn't even recognisable as a 40k army. No amount of packaging or protection is going to save that. So he had to borrow an army from SM Battle Reports for the weekend. So yeah, just make sure you take your hold luggage. You don't take it on your hold luggage. You might find as well, like airline crew, there was a couple in Gibraltar on the way home this time where crew, as we were getting on the plane or just before we were going to go through the check-in point, asking people, because they wanted to save space in the overhead lockers, can we take your bag and put it underneath? It's like, no, hold on to it, hug it, whatever you need to do, tell them it's worth £25,000 or something, whatever it takes to keep that bag in the overhead locker and not underneath the plane. So that's my first tip. And also, actually, while we're talking about aeroplanes and aeroplane security, don't do what I did the other year and leave all your hobby tools in with your army. Scanners at the airport. Heathrow don't like knives, really. If you intend to bring a knife, they're exactly that. That's their image. So when a big hobby knife flashes up on the scanner and you get strip searched, you're going to regret it. The man's hands were very cold. That's all I'd say.
Lewis, is your army magnetised?
It is not, no.
It's not. Would you think they have a problem with magnetised stuff on planes?
I guess you just put it through the scanner. You say this has metal in it. Go through.
Yeah,
but a magnet, no? Is a magnet more problematic or not? I don't know.
think. No, not usually. Not as far as I'm aware. People have brought magnetised armies and not had a problem. As
The
far as I'm
magnets are
aware.
so small, I don't think it would cause any issues.
Sometimes, at least one occasion, I've been asked to get the army out on the little table next to it, because I thought it might happen with the falchion, because it just looks like a remote control car or something like that if you put it in a scanner. But it's all resin, so I guess it doesn't really show up very well. But yeah, you might be asked to take your army out and tell people what it is, I guess, if it's got loads of metal in it. Like metal
To which you go,
God.
oh, I didn't realise you played. So this is my 1750 points. So I'm running,
Yes. Yeah.
and their eyes glaze over, and they go, just go for it.
There's a guy in the team, for those who don't know, called Rob Campion, who is he hates people I shouldn't say this, but he hates people knowing that he plays 40k. Like he's still, he's in the closet still, I suppose you could argue. And it takes him a lot of effort to tell someone. It takes him a lot of effort. My dream is for him to go through security and then have to get out in front of everyone and show each model. Oh, the tingles it would give me. I'd record it. Sorry for interrupting, Luke.
Poor guy. No, you're right. It's that is a whole different thing. It's a whole other topic there, Chris, dear leader, about being in the closet, because I definitely
I'm
was
so
until I
in the
turned sort
closet
of
as well.
18, 19. I've kind of got to the point now where I don't care anymore what people think of me. So as you can tell, I lowered myself to 6++.
My colleagues at work know, because I go straight from work to events, and it's weird how accepting people are of the hobby now. And people ask genuine questions. They're like, "Oh, that's really cool." It's like, you don't think that, because I was playing. How old am I now? 29. So I was playing 21 years ago, and I remember being met with derision and mockery, and that was the comfort space. It's like, oh yes, no, I'm playing Warhammer. You're going to think that I'm a dickhead, and I don't care because I like doing it. So when people who aren't in the space are like, "Oh, that's really interesting. Tell me more," I'm like, why are you being polite? I don't trust this. It's
no, definitely. Since I joined the Environment Agency, my work team have been following it, they wanted updates and all the painting and stuff like that. So I've been sending them photos of models into the work WhatsApp group. It's been great. It's been so nice to have not that I've experienced much grief before in my previous job, but in this current job, yeah, it's been really lovely. They've been like asking for all the model photos and asking how I'm getting on and all that sort of stuff. So that's been really nice. I think generally, as you say, is a lot more accepting nowadays. People are. Which is
The
really
man cannot be stopped. He will do anything to sell his Saffron event tickets, even converting his workmates into gamers.
I've got to fund those 79 actors somehow, Eds.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no. So whilst we're still on logistics, I thought it would be sensible to talk about money. A lot of people don't like talking about money, but I think everyone does need to be aware. We're all aware 40k is not a cheap hobby in the best of times anyway, and one of the few ways you can make it even more expensive is to throw international flights and hotels into the mix, because that generally just adds more and more on, and so not everyone is fortunate enough to be able to do it, to find the money to be able to do that. Travelling like that isn't for everyone, so I would say all this stuff we're chatting about and how much fun I had and all that sort of stuff, I don't want anyone to feel any pressure that they have to go and travel abroad and do their 40k in the way that I'm doing it. Everyone has to work within their means, don't they, and prioritise the hobby spending in a way that gives you the most joy. And there's really amazing events in the UK all the time.
Like Saffron Slab.
Saffron Slab.
He doesn't have to plug it. There's like a wait list. They've already sold all the tickets.
Yes, we've sold the tickets. Actually, I've almost sold the bloody August ones as well. It's been great. I've not even posted about that one, and people are buying them, which is great. So you can have just as much fun in the UK, and I'm trying to create No Retreat and Gibraltar GT in the UK anyway. So you won't even miss out by being at home. You get the same experience here. So don't feel any pressure, please. I don't want anyone to feel like that. Come away from this.
So buy your tickets now. It's almost sold out.
But that being said, there are definitely some ways to reduce cost of travelling. So Chris, Julian and we took stupidly early flights out of the UK, meaning we had to leave for Heathrow at 3 in the morning, but those flights were hundreds of pounds, £150, £200 cheaper than flying at a more reasonable hour. We stayed in an Airbnb rather than a hotel. Love Airbnb. Technically only 2 bedrooms, but the living room had enough space to hold a third mattress, so we could get 3 of us in a 2-bedroom Airbnb, which meant that our accommodation was like 40 quid a night each instead of 80 to £100 a night for a hotel. So best part of 300 quid saved for each of us there. And being in the Airbnb also meant that we could cook most nights, so I subjected Chris and Julian to my cooking for 3 or 4 out of the 5 nights we were there, which gave them food poisoning, but they saved about 150 quid on food bills and alcohol bills from restaurants. So overall, we were able to save probably best part of 500 quid compared to what we would have spent on the trip. So
I don't know about you guys, but I'm not liking this Lewis character. He's bragging about being able to afford to travel, and he has friends. Disgraceful behaviour. Like, what do you think this is? Like some sort of, place for people to meet?
But yeah, it wasn't cheap still, but it could have been a lot worse. And there are ways to try and make it a bit cheaper. And actually, clear conversation with your mates up front about what you're trying to expect out of the week. All 3 of us. Chris is going through buying a house. Julian's doing loads of work on his house at the moment. I've just changed to a job to try and make Saffron Slam work a little bit more as an actual venture. So none of us have a lot of money at the moment. So we all agreed that we would try and do the trip for as a reasonable price as possible. And I think if you all go in on the same page and you all go on with the same expectations of how you're going to be spending your money, I think you can all come out of it good friends still, despite the fact that you didn't spend as much money as some other people who went to 5-star restaurants every night. So, assuming you've made it to your destination, survived the cavity search for having your hobby knife in your bag, it's time to have a good time, I think. And in my opinion, I think, and this seems pretty obvious, but one of the joys of travelling for 40k is that you get to go and see places that you've never seen before, do other things that aren't 40k related as part of your 40k trip. There's no chance I'd ever have gone to Gibraltar. No offence to Gibraltar, but I never would have gone had it not been for 40k. Would never have seen it. And now actually I'm fortunate enough to have some friends for life in Gibraltar. So that's an experience that I'm never going to forget. I'm never going to take those friendships are never going to leave me. So really, I think if you are travelling and you can do it, spend some time before or after the event in the location that you're travelling to, so you can try and experience it. In the case of Gibraltar, I took Chris and Julian up into the nature reserve on top of the rock. We saw the macaques. We went into the caves, and there was a cave that had a big stalactite angel thing in it. It looked like an angel. So Julian's a sisters player, so he was able to pray to the angel of St Michael's Cave for 6s on his miracle dice, which unfortunately didn't work out because he just rolled nothing but 1s for his miracle dice for the rest of the weekend. Went on the big suspension bridge. We saw old military gun emplacements. Went on the cable car. Did a whiskey tasting thing at a distillery. All sorts. So met up with some friends, my friends from the Rock, and who took us around. Went to the pubs and all that sort of stuff. So all that sort of time that you spend with your best mates that you'll never forget is one of the joys of travelling. You just the 3 of us went round, saw all these things, and actually some memories there that I don't think none of us will ever forget. If Chris or Julian is still on the chat, they'll probably give me some grief in about 3 seconds' time for me getting all soppy. But yeah, so onto the games themselves, and this I think comes back to your point, Davey, about playing with people from different countries. That's a really, really positive thing. You get to meet people from all over the world, like-minded people as well, people that just love 40k. People from Spain, Germany, the States. I've met an Olympic rower at a 40k event abroad, and you're all there for the same reason. You all love playing your toy soldiers, and that genuinely creates a really great atmosphere because you've got all these people coming in from different parts of the world with different cultures, different experiences, all getting together to play 40k. So it just creates an atmosphere that I don't necessarily think you get in the UK just from people that come to an event every single weekend. But it does obviously create situations where you need to be careful. So there's cultural differences that you need to be aware of between different people. And I don't know what language the Barcelona GT is being held in, Davey. All the ones I've been to, they've stipulated in the event pack that all the languages can be English during the game.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm pretty sure it's in Spanish or Catalan, but...
So you've got a language barrier there. When events...
No tengo en barriga, mate.
Well, you're fine then. I can't... Whatever you just said, I hope you were being nice to me.
No, Aaron does. That's the one we have to overcome.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's something to check out if you are doing an international event, what language they're expecting you to speak at the table. Because I know in Gibraltar they do enforce it, because it's not fair if someone doesn't speak the language and you're chatting to a mate. It doesn't create the right experience, does it? So, but it means that you'd be playing people whose English isn't their first language if it is an English language event. So sometimes you have to work a bit harder to make sure you both understand each other. Understand what your army does, understand what their army does, and it gives more opportunities for confusion to occur during the game about what you're planning on doing, who is moving where, what abilities are being used, all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, again, I think because of the atmosphere that's created by all these different people getting together, as long as you all have the right attitude, you get through it, you work it out. Jose, my first opponent from the Gibraltar GT, Spanish guy, brilliant. The level of energy that he brought to the whole thing was just incredible. I think if I could bottle even half of his energy and his positivity, I'd be a much happier man than I am, despite Ed's best efforts to treat me otherwise.
How dare you? This is why I treat you with the contempt you deserve. It's for you know, things like that.
You've had one evening in the seat and your power's going to your head. And then a final point, which I think might be a more general point, and actually I'd be interested to get all of your opinions. Do you guys tend to drink alcohol when you're playing your games at 40k events?
No, never.
You don't, Ed?
I don't. No.
Exclusively alcohol.
Exclusively alcohol.
No, not always, but it depends. The more games I lose, the more pints I drink, is my game.
Fair enough. Now, this is coming from me as a very boring person, doesn't really drink much. But I think it's really, really important if you are travelling abroad and you are spending a lot of money to go to an event, that you and your opponent are both aware of what's going on, and you don't let the excitement of being abroad, playing games with people you've never met in different languages and all sorts, with your mates, and get to you. I think the absolute last thing I would want as a player is my opponent to be faced with someone across the table who's pissed, turns up late, really hungover, feeling pretty sick. If I've spent a lot of money to go and fly abroad to play a game of 40k, I really want my opponent to be a part of that. And it's something that the SM Battle Reports guys were actually quite hot on at the start of the event, because they've had a couple of experiences in the past where people have just got so drunk they weren't capable of playing a game properly, which does kind of ruin it for your opponent. It's a really hard balance because you want to go and have a really good time. I'm not saying you can't go and have a good time, but I think it is when you are abroad, you can very rapidly get out of control, and that just sucks the joy out of your opponent's experience. Which is, for me, that if I knew I was doing that to my opponent, I'd be absolutely devastated. I'd just feel so guilty. But just keep in mind that that's what you're there for. You're there to play games, and you want to try and give your opponent a decent experience. And I think ultimately, if you're abroad, you're on holiday, and you want to go properly mad, do it after the event, or do it a few days before. Go to the casinos. Gibraltar's got great casinos. I'm not a gambler, but that was brilliant fun. Just the evening we spent in there, soak the atmosphere in, all that sort of stuff. Probably me being a bit of a spoiled sport, but I think that's quite important.
No, I think it's a totally fair point, mate. Like it's like anything else. If you take alcohol away from it, even things such as being late, just being rude, just being, you want to make sure that every game of 40k you have a great time, your opponent has a great time, and I think that it's all a part of it. But it's a great show.
Yeah.
What if you play terribly regardless of whether you're pissed or not? Asking for a friend.
I think there's no hope for you.
Oh, God damn it! I'm gonna have to learn how to lose in Spanish now. Jesus.
Your friend's gonna have to learn how to lose in Spanish. You mean?
Yeah, my friend. Sorry, my friend's gonna have to learn how to lose in Spanish.
Good save, Ed. No one noticed.
Nobody knows. Yeah. Obviously, I mean, there's obviously no issue with people drinking at events, but it's when maybe you get a little too trolleyed.
Sick on the table.
I mean, I say bring it on. Give me an easy round 5, easy round 6. Sound at that point, I'll take a free game. I'm happy with that.
But yeah, so that's my thoughts. That's my thoughts on travelling.
I love that.
I don't know if that was vaguely useful.
No, that's really good.
A few learnings,
100%.
musings.
Lovely stuff. Well, thank you, Lewis. Despite, I'm not sure if I'm more filled with admiration that you went 4-2 with a falchion, or the rage that you took a falchion to an event and it did well.
You were so adamant I was going to fail miserably.
Well, see, here's the thing. This is not a results-based analysis household. We look at things and call them bad because they're bad, not because they had good results. So it hurts me deeply to see something I consider to be bad do well. But no, congratulations. It's obviously a huge achievement to go 4-2 with Imperial Fists. I did say before we actually went live, that's like winning an event for Imperial Fists. That's more games than all of the other Imperial Fists players will win in Arcs of Omen. And it'll be interesting to see when we come back to the win rate on the faction, whether you've skewed Imperial Fists up to the top of the list. You might have to fit another event in there.
Did I say 43%? I can't remember. I think I said 43% for Imperial.
Maybe, yeah. You may have pulled it up from the lows of the 30s, the low 30s, to something that Davey might be right with, which would also be upsetting to me.
If it makes you feel better, David, there was another Imperial Fist player there, and he went
They
to
did shit.
So
Okay.
we're now 50-50. Out of Gibraltar, with the Imperial Fists are on an average 50% win rate. So as far as Games Workshop are concerned, Imperial Fist are perfectly balanced. But
Chris,
no,
there's nothing wrong with winning 2 games, mate. All right, reel it in. It's not shit. Play with an underpowered faction.
It's a really good RTT.
Yeah.
That it's day 2.
They came right near the bottom. I remember looking at the results. And
They were the worst, because even bloody Crimson Fists had 1% more win rate than them. So I thought they would have a worse win rate, but yeah.
But yeah.
Lovely stuff. So with that all wrapped up, I think it's time to have a look at some of the stuff that's come in today for 10th edition, because there has been a whole lot shared. So...
Well, I will take this opportunity to shoot, guys, as I have to leave. But
Yeah,
have a great
you're
evening.
Nice one.
Lovely.
Cheers,
Thanks for
Davey.
joining us, Davey.
Love you, bye.
Fantastic. So now that the filthy Xenos have gone, we can talk about our power armored gods as intended. So a couple of bits have dropped for 10th edition. Obviously, faction focuses on Space Marine. Space Marines came out today, and we're starting to see some of the rules for 10th edition, and some of it's pretty bonkers. So we've seen that we're moving away from maybe chapter rules. You won't have necessarily an Ultramarine force in terms of your list building, although there are keywords still for Ultramarine, so it'll be interesting to see how they go. But there's going to be detachment rules. the one that they've previewed here is the Gladius Task Force, which is something that all Space Marine players on launch will be able to play. Once the rule books come out for Dark Angels, Blood Angels, and Light, perhaps we'll see them move away from that. But we see that they have their army rule is combat doctrines. Slightly better, I think, than the combat doctrines that we had before. Slightly, yeah. So obviously they've been playing against Tyranids. They've seen the synaptic imperatives and gone, you know what? I want some of that, but more gooder. Which is, really what I think these are. So across the 5 turns, you're only going to be able to have a buff for 3 of the turns. But fortunately, these buffs are incredible. So you can pick them in your command phase. You pick one of the 3. You can't repeat them. But that's fine, because all of them are fantastic. You're starting off with...
Be dead, so...
yeah, turn 4, you don't need one. Devastator Doctrine. This unit is eligible to shoot in a turn in which it advanced. And that's not a single unit buff. That is every unit in your army gets the Doctrine. You don't have to be...
Centurion.
You don't have to be near a Synapse creature to get it. You don't have to be tied to an AdMech HQ with a data tether. It's just, if you're on the board, you're a Space Marine, you get this rule. So what do we think of shooting and advancing army-wide? That seems...
It was quite good when Tau did it all the time.
Yeah. Although they do have, 8-inch advance on 10-inch move models.
I know from experience with the Knights, being able to advance and shoot just gives you so much more flexibility.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's only once in the game, so you're not going to be able to do everything. If I could do it every single turn, I'd just have this one on permanently.
It does get early lines of sight, doesn't it? And your threat ranges increase and angles of attack for turn 1 increase.
And for some of the slower moving units, I mean, for an advanced roll of a 5 for a Centurion, that would have got me out of so many holes over the course of the weekend. It doubles their movement. They can just yeet somewhere, get into a piece of cover, and then still shoot. It's without sacrificing any kind of firepower. That's great.
It'll be interesting to see if any rules come out to let units auto-advance 6, perhaps, or maybe bikes retain their auto-advance 6, whether that is something that gets utilised. Attack bikes, obviously, can rock a multi-melter, get some damage really far up the board. Ravenwing obviously doing that right now. So Devastator Doctrine, not too shabby. We've also got Tactical Doctrine, which is army-wide fallback, shoot, and charge, which is not bad. How many times have you been tied up and wished that you weren't in a game? It's quite a lot.
And it's great for resilient units, isn't it? Anything that can take a charge but wants to be able to shoot afterwards, it can just tank it, fall back, blast away, and then carry on with the game.
Yeah, this is absolutely something that changes how people play as well. It's one of those rules that it's almost better when you don't have to use it, because your opponent isn't going to want to charge you and tie you up.
Yeah, it's not
because it's there's absolutely no point. It's like people don't really want to charge and tie up my Crisis Brick. They still do sometimes, but it might change how they play, and then I get to zoom over and just shoot them to death, which I'm a big fan of. So not bad. And then the one that's just cracked out of its goddamn mind, Assault Doctrine. Why not just have an entire army advance and charge? That's
turn 2, just turn 2.
Turn 2 Blood Angels, off they go.
Yeah. Or if you're not playing a pure melee army, maybe never. Maybe turn 4. Maybe turn 3, you do it with 2 units and go, well, I feel like I got value out of this. But your opponent is going to be going, so how far can you move? Well, I've got 3 units of van vets, and they move 12. Then I can advance 6, and then I can charge. So 30 inches, and they're gonna be sat all the way back, going, oh, fuck. It's I'm glad you can't repeat these. And now that I've said that, I'm sure we will see some rules.
We'll see a strat, yeah.
Yeah, it's reuse the one that you used last turn, or like a special character will let you do it.
Yeah.
Perhaps Gilliman, although we know it's not Gilliman, actually.
Not Gilliman.
Slight spoilers for Ed. So yeah, combat doctrines.
Ooh, tease me, Ed. Tease it.
Tickle the ball, stroke the shaft.
No.
And yeah, so that's what you get for the Gladius Task Force, which is just wildly strong. I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But it's quite exciting to think, because obviously these are replacing, Ultramarine faction rules. It's replacing your shield hosts or your hive fleet. So having them be strong is definitely interesting. We'll see how that pans out.
Yeah, because I mean, you've got to assume that you're not going to be Blood Angels are not going to be getting +1 to wound. Imperial Fist not going to be ignoring cover, all that sort of stuff. That's going to go.
Yeah, I feel
So
like some of
this
that
is in
thematic stuff
replacement. Yeah,
might be rolled into strats, perhaps, or we'll just see how it pans out. It feels like they're going more chapter agnostic for Space
Yeah.
Marines, and then when the books come out and the supplements come out, maybe we'll then see more sort of focused in on traditional playstyles.
See, forgive me if I'm wrong. These doctrines, you don't get those unless you take a Gladius Strike Force. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
So if
So
you take a Blood Angel specific one, you won't get access to this. So suddenly, your Blood Angels will not be advancing in charge.
absolutely, it's looking like you're going to be getting 2 army-wide rules, which is for Space Marines. The first one, Oath of Moment, every turn, pick a unit, you get full rerolls to hit and wound against it. Which, if anyone's played any games of 9th, will know full rerolls to wound. Pretty good. In an edition where they're cutting down on rerolls, so glad we've got that coming from the most popular army in the game. He said, not at all sarcastically.
We're cutting down on rerolls.
Yeah,
Apart from when
we'll
we're
see.
not cutting down on rerolls.
Yeah,
Giving
you know
more
what?
rerolls.
We'll see how everything shapes up. Maybe Space Marines are going to be super expensive, and they can absolutely destroy a single unit really effectively, but kind of limp fish into other things. A man can dream, because I don't really want to play Space Marines or play against Space Marines if they're rerolling everything. But we'll go from
Doesn't
there.
bode well for knights, that's for sure.
No, it doesn't. But that's something you're just gonna have to live with. You can bring the falchion instead and be happy. So speaking of big targets that you might want to put all your rerolls into, we've finally seen the data sheet for the Land Raider, the classic
Everyone's
model.
been waiting. So.
Everyone has been waiting. The thing I was waiting for was the toughness, because for me that was going to be sort of the benchmark for the tough models in the game.
Yeah.
So toughness 12, stat line wise, that's really the big change that we're seeing here. It's still got the same movement, still got the same save, same number of wounds. Leadership is comparable. Obviously, the whole leadership system's been revamped. Objective control 5 is something that I'm very pleased to see. I'm a big fan of my tanks and my monsters. More of those, if you can plonk that on an objective, and it's such a big model that your opponent might not be able to flip 5 models on there to take it from you. So I'm quite a fan of
Especially
that.
because you're not allowed to be on
Stand on the middle.
of the objective.
Yeah, that was something that we saw from Warhammer Fest, which is...
Do we think that's an actual rule? I think that's going to be rather annoying to play if
Yeah, I'm not
you are
sure.
trying
I think
to bring vehicles.
I think it's going to be fine for everyone apart from vehicles, isn't it? Because I believe the rule that, as it was played at Warhammer Fest, is the central objective marker, the 40mm marker, you cannot finish a move on. It doesn't obscure movement, you can move over it, but you can't finish a move in there. That's fine if you're playing infantry. It's not so fine if you're bringing knights or any vehicles.
It's if the terrain, depending on how dense the terrain is, you're already having issues with moving knights and vehicles around some layouts.
Yeah.
And then if they continue with the same thing where you're not supposed to be able to put objectives in terrain, and then the knights can't then finish on the centre of an objective, but also can't fit through the gaps, you're really restricting the use of these things. So what I really hope is that they just had really cool markers. They wouldn't let people finish on top of the markers because they just had cool markers. Not that was an actual rule that would then apply for the whole game. That's what I hope anyway. But it is interesting. The toughness point that you made, Ed, is really interesting because Land Raiders, obviously the Imperial Land Raider used to be toughness 8. Las Cannons used to be strength 9, meaning Las Cannons are wounding Land Raiders on 3s. Now, Las Cannons have also gone up in strength. They've only gone up to strength 12, which meaning assuming the wound roll system is the same, Las Cannons are now wounding Land Raiders on 4s instead of 3s. So you've got a whole pip of efficiency lost on the Las Cannon there.
Yeah, although they are now up to D6 plus 1 damage, which is very interesting. It feels like a good place to have an anti-tank weapon without being oppressive. It's a nice amount of damage. I don't feel too bad about that. On there as well.
Swingy, but
yeah, but you'll splatter Marine if you shoot into it.
Yeah.
That is the biggest feel bad of a D6 damage weapon, not killing a single 2-wound model. Other interesting things on there, we're seeing that the multi-melter down to 18-inch range from 24 inches. Could be an interesting... Maybe all melter is just that little bit shorter range, perhaps.
and only strength 9 as well.
Strength 9, yeah. Obviously, Strength 9 would be not too shabby if it
has
was
kept
Strength
its
9 now.
AP4.
It has, yeah. So that it looks like multi-melters might fit a niche in killing Terminators,
Yeah.
which is, perhaps we'll see those. Even if the rules and the points don't line up, they have fantastic models. So maybe we'll expect to see those a lot in the first couple of months of the edition.
It makes you make an interesting choice as well between. Obviously, the choice in this situation isn't between a Lascannon and a multi-melter, but if your choice was on a Devastator squad or whatever, you've got to choose between strength and AP. So if you're picking your multi-melter, you're going to be wounding Land Raiders on 5s.
Yep.
Which is not great, but
it would be a real problem if you had a faction trait that gave you full rerolls to hit and wound.
Do you know what, Ed? I think you might be right.
Yeah, but that's fine. We'll leave that. We'll not get to doom and gloom. There's a couple of bits on there that are interesting. The twin heavy bolter has sustained hits 1, so everyone gets to be Imperial Fists, which is, I think, one of the most fun things you can do when rolling dice is have more dice. Exploding 6s is like, Chris, you played Necrons in 8th, Tesla Immortals. It's a hell of a drug. It's hard to put down. So any exploding 6s, I'm here for it. I'm absolutely happy.
Well, I love my striking scorpions. Right. All those exploding 6s.
Well, they don't really get to use their exploding 6s because the sergeant kills whatever he touches with his auto wound.
Sometimes.
But if you ran a second unit, that'd be pretty neat.
They're still there.
However, we've bullshitted enough. There's a melee profile that hits on 4s, cool, whatever.
I thought what was also interesting, Ed, is that the Hunter Killer missile hits on 2s.
I do like that. We saw that change on one of the other transports. It might have been on the Rhino that they showed previously, but it's a really good. Yeah, it's a lovely change. You've got a one-shot missile. Rolling a 2 on that feels terrible. Rolling a 1 on
a missile. It's a rocket.
Well, yes, yeah.
Take the orc way of doing things and call it a rocket.
Call it a Hitile. But anyway, that's enough about the weapons, because as teased, assault ramp. You can move your Land Raider up. You can disembark your Black Templar painted Terminators with Thunderhammer and Storm Shields. You can maybe move them afterwards. We don't know yet. I don't think it's been revealed. But you can absolutely charge. And that takes me back to when I was so bad at the game that Terminators and a Land Raider were just an unbeatable threat for me. And I think back on those days fondly. Being 8 and going, oh no! And having a rough grasp on the rules. It was good times. What are we thinking? Do you think that might be the thing that brings Land Raiders into the competitive play?
Don't they already have an assault ramp?
No.
They lost the rule, didn't they?
Yeah. I mean, they have it on the model.
It's always been on the model. But I think it's interesting because it seems to refer that you, and this might have been touched on in early reveals, that you're going to be able to get out of vehicles after they've moved.
Yes, so you can get out of vehicles after they've moved and you can shoot, but you can't charge, which I think is a really fun idea. It makes transports feel more useful. You can disembark guardsmen with flamers or whatever, melter guns, and that's going to feel worth doing. Maybe less so because all vehicles have firing ports by the looks of things, or a lot of them do anyway. A lot of the transports, but I'm looking forward to that. Assault ramps, gonna be a lot of Wolfen coming for you from
the Space Wolves are gonna love it, aren't they?
Yeah, and they definitely do want to get up close and personal. So I'm looking forward to that, and by that I mean not looking forward to that at all, because it'll be an absolute
bring it down somehow.
Sledgehammer.
Pile those Land Raiders, guys. You've heard it here first.
I went into my local Games Workshop and they were out of Land Raiders apart from the new 30k one. He said that I can't remember what it was. It was a couple of weeks ago. He said they'd revealed some rules or talked about assault ramps maybe for the first time in the Warcom article, and people had just come in and bought all of the Land Raiders, which is wild to me. But I am looking forward to
I love
seeing
people.
them.
They're just.
I also really like the damaged rule. The new instead of bracketing, you just -1 to hit. That's great. Assuming, and I don't know if this is true, but if they keep the same, you're capped at -1 to hit. You won't be able to bring a Land Raider down to hitting on worse than 4s with its main guns, which is going to go a long way to making your expensive model feel worthwhile to run. So I think we've done that one to death. There is a model here who is almost as big as a Land Raider.
Oh,
Aren't
here
they?
he is.
Here he is. And it's our first Primarch datasheet. I say that as if we've seen a load of datasheets. It's our 7th datasheet, the first of which is a Primarch, and he's
Poor
very
imitation of
interesting.
Dawn.
If
Bit
by a
of
poor
what?
imitation you mean alive and useful, then
Dawn
very
isn't
poor
alive.
indeed.
He's too busy fighting demons. He'll be back, don't you worry.
Excellent.
Goodman continues to make a mess of trying to save the galaxy. Dawn will come and clear up after him, as he always has to do. Even with only one hand.
Well, as soon as we have a Rogel Dawn datasheet, I'll happily go over that with you. But so Gilliman is, most importantly, I think we've noticed, is still a monster. We're not the infantry that we thought he might be potentially walking through walls. So that's going to be interesting. Obviously, not going to be joining squads. He does have a rule on there that if he's within range of Adeptus Astartes infantry, he has the lone operative, which I believe is, they've spelled out basically, look out, sir, but modernized. He is an absolute beast. T9. He's as tough as a rhino. He's 2 up save still, 10 wounds, up from 9. He's got a 5 up leadership, which is not that high, I thought, because it's roll 2d6 and you've got to roll above. That means that Gilliman's going to be failing a battle shock test something like 1 in 9 times, maybe a little higher, 1 in 6. I can't do the maths off the top of my head.
Tactical withdrawal, Ed.
Yeah.
It is.
Of course, that's he does have a rule on his data sheet that can mitigate that, so maybe it's not a problem. And objective control of 4. It'll be interesting to see if big characters do get more objective control, whether we end up moving back towards a bit of hero hammer. But yeah, weapons-wise, Hand of Dominion. It's a strength 6 AP2 2 damage Storm Bolter. It's not bad. Can't hate it. But he also has 2 melee weapons. And it doesn't say on the datasheet, but I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of rule in 10th where you can't attack with multiple melee weapons.
Well, this was something I read that apparently at the Warhammer Fest, and obviously we don't know for certain.
Sure.
Apparently at Warhammer Fest they said that if you're a monster, you can fight with all your weapon profiles because Screamer Killers were doing that or something like that. Which would mean, if that was true, would mean that because Gilliman's a monster, he would be.
That I think
everything.
might be a little bit of
But yeah, exactly.
represented because Screamer Killers do only have 1 melee profile. So
Okay.
hopefully whoever said that is confused because I don't want to see Gilliman rock up and have 21 attacks. That feels unreasonable. He's basically got a sweep and a strike.
Yeah.
The strike being 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 14, so wounding probably every vehicle in the game on 3s at least. AP 4, so cutting through almost every armor save. Damage 4, because why not? And then he has a sweep as well, 14 attacks, only strength 8, so he's wounding a rhino on 5s, but
Amateur.
most non-vehicles in the games are going to be taking some pain. AP 3 and 2 damage, but more interestingly, you can see that he's got devastating wounds on the strikes, which I believe on 6s to wound turns them into 2 mortal wounds instead of a save.
Excellent.
Which is pretty good to have an ability that has 14 attacks. It's not bad. And then lethal hits from
Well,
the
I mean,
Hand of
that's
Dominion.
realistically going to be 2.
No,
So
it's
he'll
not.
take 4 mortal wounds, won't he?
If I play him, it'll be 2. My opponent, it's
12.
one of those that does a little spike and
He
you
does
go, it's okay.
B3 on 6s at the moment, right? Something.
It's
he does,
perhaps, yeah. But you don't take him for his damage output.
He doesn't have
currently.
14 attacks at the moment, though, does he?
That is true. That
He
is
does not.
true. Interestingly, on the Hand of Dominion, I believe he's got 6s to hit auto wound. I think that was what lethal hits was from memory. But enough about that. The real reason you'd take Gilliman is always going to be his datasheet abilities. And he has 3 options to choose from with Author of the Codex. Author of the Codex being select one of the abilities in your command phase, and until the start of your next command phase, the model has the ability. Chris Symbol says mathematically he one-shots a Land Raider just with the strike. That is good to know.
He needs to get 4 attacks through, basically, wouldn't he, out of 7? So,
yeah,
and
that's
that would
pretty
be a
likely
Land
to happen. But yeah, so there are 3 options he can choose from. He can have a 6-inch aura of +1 to their objective control and re-roll Battle Shock and leadership tests, which is interesting because I thought Battle Shock was replacing leadership, so maybe they're using that as some other rule. there.
I think Battle Shock applies when you've lost half your wounds or half your models. But then I suspect leadership there'll be another ability, whether it's something like Night Lords or whatever, that will make you take leadership checks, as in a stat check rather than an actual test.
Feels odd to have a double up there, but either way, we'll see what it is when we've got more rules. You can have Master of Battle. You know that rule where you get to reroll all hits and wounds against a single high value target?
You can only do it once, Ed.
Well, you see, that's the thing. If you take Guilliman, you can do it twice.
Oh,
there is a
that's
caveat.
2 nights dead.
There is a caveat. You do have to fully kill the first unit before you do it. So, that sounds all fair and reasonable, but maybe you're going to shoot one of them, and then you're going to charge the other one. Suddenly, you're definitely going to be getting your full rerolls in combat because you've put all your guns into the other model. So, that'll be interesting to see how it goes.
I think we should probably have caveated this whole little section by saying that we don't have access to any of the points. So if this guy's 500 points,
I think on there it says he's 27 points. It's off the top of my head, easily 75 into a list. It's Guilliman looking nice and cheap there. Yes, of course. We don't have the surrounding rules. We don't have the points. This is all pure speculation, because that is the sort of fun thing that people do on the internet when there's no real information to go from. But then the third one as well, Supreme Strategist. Once per turn, a friendly Adeptus Astartes unit within 12 inches can use a stratagem for 0 CP, even if you've used that stratagem already. Now that is going to vary. How good are the stratagems? Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad. That seems like a good thing to be able to use. They do tell us one of the stratagems that you get if you play the Gladius Strike Force, which is 2 CP. All your models are Repentia, and they just fight on death, which is...
I love Repentia. They're amazing.
So that's a really good rule to have, just in general. But if you can do it for 2 CP, and you can do it on do it for 0 CP, and you can do it on 2 units, paying for them once, it's going to be really hard to deal with Marines in melee. It's going to be really hard to outshoot Marines, because they're just going to re-roll hits and wounds. So I'm very interested to see...
Though. You can only pick one of those each turn, can't you? So
no, because re-rolling hits and wounds is just a base rule they get, so they can do it on 1 unit, and then you can also fight on death twice. So it'll be interesting to see how the play pattern emerges for that. He does also have a get back up on a 3+, which is everyone's favourite rule. It feels bad if you've got it, because you only ever roll 1s and 2s. And it's great if your opponent has it, and then they get back up and you lose the game because you were waiting to see what the rule they have. But yeah, any thoughts on Guilliman?
He looks great. Well, I think the important thing there, as we said, we don't know points costs. This game seems to be pushing more towards a Sigmar-esque approach, and we know Sigmar has really expensive big characters. And maybe it'll just be he's actually just, you can't get value out of all of his buffs, because he can kill quite a lot of stuff in combat, and he can provide a high amount of efficiency, but actually he's 400 points, and it's better just to have 400 points of other stuff that's still going to get rerolls from particular leaders or whatever. We don't know.
That is interesting. I hadn't considered that maybe the characters specifically would be going up a lot in points the way Sigma have, because they have very expensive characters, don't they?
I think it helps rein in the size of the armies, though, doesn't it, in Sigma?
Sure.
Which is nice. And having just spent a weekend playing 1750, I didn't feel like I didn't have enough stuff. Like, it was quite nice to play a slightly smaller game and not be so stressed about.
Typically happens is at the start of an edition, you play with about 1750 points worth of models from the last edition, and then by the end of the edition, the balancing levers they tweak where they go, oh, we'll make this a little bit cheaper and we'll make it a little bit cheaper. You end up with just more stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see and how long they manage to maintain sort of a smaller army if they do go that route. But yeah, so I think it is getting a little late. We can just whip through the rest of the stuff here. Redemptor Dreadnoughts, Heavy Onslaught Gatling Cannon. 12 shots, strength 6, AP 0, 1 damage, 6 to wound and mortal wounds. Just a nice profile for killing gaunts. Can't hate it.
Exactly what it says on the tin.
Exactly what it says on the tin. It's almost like there's going to be a starter set with 20 gaunts in it. Heavy Laser Destroyer, not a bad gun. 72-inch range, which we know from their previous articles, we're not going to a bigger table size. We're staying on this. So 72 inches is corner to corner, You can shoot anything. 2 shots, hitting on 3s, strength 16, AP 4, D6 plus 4 damage. This is an addition that's going to be lowering damage. That is a brutal gun. I am terrified to be facing against that. Hopefully Redemptors are back up to 300, 350 points, and you can only run one of them
That's
as
what
a
the laser
centerpiece.
destroyer is. What is the railgun and what is the Valiant's harpoon going to do? That's
Well,
what
they're
I'm
not
excited
Space
for.
Marine models, so don't
Yeah.
get too excited. Obviously, only 2 shots. It only hits on 3s. It's going to be wounding most vehicles on 3s. That's not as reliable as you want it to be.
No.
But you are going to be re-rolling hits and wounds with it on the target that you want it to kill, because if you've got a high-value gun like that, you definitely want to make it get its money back.
That's the interesting point, though, isn't it? You've got a high value gun like that, and you put all the rerolls into it. That doesn't necessarily benefit much else of your army, does it?
That's why you take Gilliman, and then you
Do it again,
you-
yeah, obviously.
yeah, you do it again. But,
But I mean, I think on average, was it D6 plus 4?
yeah.
It's damage. So what you're going to roll a 3.5. So if you get both of them through into a Land Raider, for example, you're going to get
Close
7
to
plus
killing.
8, 15 damage. You're not going to kill it. So that, on average, does not kill a Land Raider.
You're going to average just shy of 12 damage into a Land Raider with
Yeah.
one gun.
It's
So-
a lot of other guns, isn't it?
Redemptors famously are covered in other guns,
Indeed.
so we will have to see. But
But
that
you've
was
got to think, like, even with the Gatling gun, it's strength 6, so it's going to be wounding Land Raiders on 6s.
yeah, but it'll be doing mortal wounds on those 6s.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, you will
Yeah.
eventually find a way of getting through it, won't you? But
Yeah.
those guns are
I'm-
nowhere near as
I'm not
efficient vehicles as they
Doom
are
and
now.
gloom. We'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to the 10th. I think it's going to be really exciting to relearn a game and find
Yeah.
how the play pattern goes. Anything else we want to say about 10th edition, or should we wrap up with a couple of viewer questions and call it a night?
I think it's getting on, so yeah, just a couple of questions.
Lovely stuff. So in the podcast questions, and do chuck questions in the chat, we might answer them if we have time. And if you're not,
We probably
Jack
should have
Hyde.
led with that.
no, because it's getting late, so I don't want to give people a chance to. I want to look like I'm giving them options,
Looking like you give a shit.
magnanimous, and yet, still a tyrant. So, looking in the podcast questions, there was a lot of talk about hydration. Obviously, hydration is important, and drinking as well. There are someone saying that the right decision might be not drinking at solo events, but drinking more at team events. As my team captain, can you weigh in on that one for me, Chris?
I would absolutely endorse other teams choosing to drink lots of alcohol.
Excellent.
I feel like that's a very strong choice, and please do.
And to piggyback on that, Jack Tide says, whatever you do, don't let the 6++ guys convince you to come out drinking with them. You'll somehow end up lost in a town you've never been to before. Reference, I went out drinking with the 6++ guys and got lost in a town I've never been to before.
Wasn't
Yeah.
that town like Kettering or something like that as well? It
So
wasn't
Northampton, we went out, had a very interesting night, and then the next morning Jack rocks up and it turns out that Jack had gone to get the taxi and then his phone had died.
Oh,
So he was just lost in the middle of the town at like 4 a.m, 5 a.m, wandering the streets of Northampton, and somehow managed to make it back at like 5 or 6. So those were the glory days, Galmaris. We haven't been out in ages, but yeah, it was.
glory days.
And then he
Ruining
still
War
went.
Masters
He
players.
still went 5-0 for us at that weekend.
I'm too old to be
You're
willing to do
29.
that. Yeah, but I'm a grumpy old man at heart. When I went to, God, which event was it? I think it was the Newcastle GT, or it was at some other event with my last team, and we shared an Airbnb, and they all went out drinking. I was like, you know what? I'm not feeling it. I'm just going to go home. I'm going to look at my matchup for tomorrow. I'm going to get some sleep. And I was sleeping downstairs, and then I woke up at about 5 in the morning as they all rocked in. Keep in mind, this is a UKTC event. You got to be at the venue and playing your game at 9:30. So I don't know if you can do any maths. That is 4.5 hours to get in, get to bed, get up, have some sleep and some food, get to the venue. Yeah, everyone looked fucking rough, and I felt very smug. It's
Our best was 6, I think. I think we got in at about 6 one time.
yeah, that
And I
sounds
set my alarm for 7:30. Good
No,
times.
no, thank you.
horrendous. Horrendous.
So I
I
literally
like
couldn't wake up. That I would literally just not even be physically able to wake up.
I was still really drunk when I woke up,
Oh,
Yeah.
so
brilliant.
it was alright.
yeah. For me, the lack of sleep is a killer. I don't get hangry, but if I'm tired, then I have none of your bullshit. It's the
Because you're normally
lovely.
so easygoing and
I was
placid.
gonna say.
So
I control the chat. How dare you speak to me in such a manner? Anyway, actual podcast question from Gelmaris, who's shit talking me in the chat. So do that. Got my fucking eyes on you. He says, "What's your biggest regret of 9th edition? Army you didn't take, army you did, event you missed, etc., etc." Which anyone want to weigh in on that one?
Not going 5-0 at the LGT with my Valiants, and therefore losing the first place spot in the UKTC to Jay and his Knights.
Yeah, because he did go 5-0.
He went 5-0. So
Yeah, he didn't bring Valiants, which might be what did it.
yes, but it would have been incredibly satisfying to shove 2 Valiants in his face and say, "I told you I could do it." But it's he's a great player, so it's fair enough. He definitely deserved it.
Fantastic.
I had one event. I was started to really pick up with the Harlequins, and I was well on course for my second 4-1 in a row. And when I spoken about before, I played Jamie East and was in control of the game and made some silly mistakes and lost that game, went 3-2, and then it just went massively downhill from there. Like
Right.
I hit a bad run of form and stuff. So I think like that is the one event one where it's like, most of the time I think my opponents, based on matchups and level of skill of opponents and that kind of, it works out roughly what I'd have expected. That event was the one that feels like it got away. It would have scored me a load more points because I was a really high, because as you all know, Harlequin scored really highly. So if I'd gone the 4-1, I would have been like right up there near the top of quite a big event, because of the points scoring. But so yeah, that was the one that got away for me.
Sure. What would mine be? I guess mine would probably be pivoting away from Tyranids to play Tau, which I enjoyed more and I think made me a better player. But I had spent 2 or 3 months sitting around like 7th to 9th in the ITC rankings for NIDS globally. And I was thinking, oh, I could push this. Maybe I can get up to 6th. Like, you were looking at the people ahead of you, and I was like, Gaylord's up there. Innes was up there. I was like, I'm not going to catch these people. But then there were a couple of names that were above me. And I was like, I definitely feel like I can outplay these people. I can get some higher scores. But instead, I played Tau for 2 out of the last 3 events of the year, dropped to like 17th or something. So I guess that would be my regret of 9th edition.
Fair.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Ultimate Funk says, favorite named character in all of 40k history, and for Tom Lohman, favorite named character that isn't Drazar. So I will answer for him because I'm obviously Tom. But someone else go first because I need to get in the right headspace.
Stop twiddling your hair. I don't know the favorite named character.
That's a tricky one.
I've read the Grey Knights Omnibus a lot, and I like Justica Alaric.
Okay. I do not know him.
He's the dude. He's the main character in the Grey Knights book series, and they're awesome books. So
Okay.
I'll go with him.
In the similar vein, then, Edward, would answer Vorth Mordrak. I had to Google his name there. But he's the chap who had the ghostly apparition of his fallen comrades. If anyone remembers, I think it was the 4th edition or maybe the 5th edition Grey Knight Codex, where you could just have like undead paladins protecting a character. That was just cool. I really like that. That's probably mine. I'm assuming yours is going to be Rogel Dawn.
As tempting as it is to go Rogel Dawn, I have very different characters depending on the scenario that they're in. The moment where in the Siege of Terror series, spoiler alert if anyone hasn't read the Siege of Terror series, it's an incredible series. You should definitely read it. But there's a moment where a White Scar character, whose name I completely forget, has to drag himself all the way across no man's land back into the Emperor's Palace with like kids and stuff in the middle of this like apocalyptic war zone, and then he takes over. Oh, what does he take over? He takes over like a Death Guard's like thing or something. But there's just a moment in that book where he's this White Scar character is just like on top of this mountain with a White Scar flag going "fuck you." And I was like, yes, you, I want you. But I can't remember his name, so that was a useless piece of information for everybody there.
Excellent, thanks.
Yeah, it did say named character, not.
He is named in Horus Heresy books.
Just
He has a
not
name, everyone has a
really-
name. Gaunt1367 has a name. So he's my
Yeah.
favourite.
Gaunt from the Gaunt's Ghost books, I think would be a great honourable mention. They're the only 40k books I've read. I've never really.
Caiaphas
No.
Kane's bodyguard bloke. What's he called? The smelly one. He was just really good with his melter gun. I just can't remember their
Yeah.
names. My name's it's too
Excellent.
late in the evening now from the names.
Oh, also any of the characters from the All Guardsmen party. If anyone's read that, it's just an online. I believe it was a RPG campaign, Inquisitor, I think, and basically the DM's written up the stories of the All Guardsmen party. And they're
Jurgen, that's it.
fantastic.
Gelmaris, brilliant, thank you.
Lovely stuff. And what would Tom's be? Tom's would be.
Night Lord's character, maybe.
Morgan
Yeah,
Ra.
yeah. Oh yeah, Morgan Ra. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
There was
leave it at
loads
Morgan
of a
Ra
fiver.
because yeah, apparently so. And Ultimate Funk says, as a follow-up to this, does anyone have a favourite character that doesn't have a model or rules yet that they'd love to see in 10th?
yeah, Justica Alaric, as I just said.
Fulgrim, because he probably will get a rule and models, given that we've had, a Demon Primarch from one of the 4 Chaos Legions that get their own books for the last 3 editions. So if they don't do Emperor's Children and Fulgrim this edition, I don't know, I'll be mildly peeved.
Mild.
God forbid.
Yeah, you don't want to see me mildly peeved.
What are you now?
Oh, I exist in a constant state of simmering rage at the patriarchy.
Oh, so mildly peeved is actually an improvement.
Yeah, that'd be great. Lovely stuff.
Tom
Josh
says
said-
actually it's Eldred Ulthran with
Really?
Sevatar as a close second. I don't know who Sevatar is.
Yeah,
Sometimes Night Lord.
Some
Night Lord. No.
Okay, well, there we go. That
You
was,
were close.
you said Night Lords. Cool. I think the last one we've got here is you've been recruited into the Warhammer naming team. Space Marines have all had their flavorful detachments written up like Gladius Task Force. What do you name the others and what rules do they bring to the army in 10th edition? So if you give me one detachment name for Space Marines, and
Well,
what
that's
that
really
might
easy.
bring.
Obviously, it's going to be the Castellan detachment.
Okay.
Because that's what they've named about 1/3 of all Warhammer things. So obviously we've got the Knight Castellan, we've got the Castellan robots in AdMech, got the Castellan launcher. It's obviously going to be a Castellan.
Isn't there a Black Templar character who's a Castellan?
Yeah.
I think.
There's got to be a Castellan task force.
Sure. And what
The-
rules would that bring for you?
AP. I'm going to be really amazing.
Brilliant. Great.
I reckon AP, extra AP. For, although they're not really doing weapons as much anymore. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll go AP.
Sure.
Cause
Of course, they have said that they're avoiding AP creep this edition.
Yep.
So
But
great
they're also
answer there.
avoiding rerolls, and here we are. So
To be fair, you know what? That actually makes it a really good answer because, talking out their asses. All right, Lewis, have you got an answer for me?
Yep, so mine is going to be the Bastion Imperialis.
Very
which
nice.
is Rogal
That
Dawn
was a
special.
good-
So it's going to come out with the
everyone's in
Rogal Dawn
colour.
model. And it's going to mean any Space Marine that joins Rogal Dawn on his Bastion Imperialis gets +7 to their toughness.
+7.
Toughness
we
11
could-
Space Marines. It's
We
happening.
could see another Loyalist Primarch because it has been. Has it been one every edition, or is it?
Well, there's massively
was it
rumoured.
7th? Was it
There's
6th or was it
a,
7th that Gilliman came out?
7.
7th, yeah. Yeah, there was There was someone who said like years and years ago they saw in the studio they saw a Angron model, a Lionel Johnson model, a Magnus model, a Mortarion model, and a Lehman Ross model. And obviously they make stuff and throw stuff away all the time, so we don't know if it will ever actually come out. But it is the one of the models they'd seen. So
Sure.
Lehman Ross coming at you. It would be a popular choice, I think.
Not as popular as Dawn, but it's definitely a choice.
Yeah, probably more popular, but way cooler.
Yeah.
Just a bit unkempt, isn't he? A bit uncivilized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff. Well, thank you for those questions. That was Jasha who left that question there. Thank you, Jasha. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a blast. And I think we have decided that we don't need Tom. The coup has been successful. And I will see you again next week hosting that 6+++ show. If I'm not hosting, there's been a murder. Good night.
Bye.